That was almost better than my laugh. Holly's got her love birds, or their doves. They're mocking doves. They're mourning love doves. What are those? What am I hearing?
That was a screaming ringneck.
Screaming ringneck, but that's a dove.
It's a parrot.
Oh, a parrot. Oh my goodness. How many birds do you have, girl? Because I'm supposed to just get into the introductions.
I've got doves and one parrot now. So.
Oh, that's cool.
And the parrot is called a ringneck.
Yeah, it's an Indian ringneck.
Is that from people wanting to wring its neck?
I believe so. Yes.
What color is the ringneck? It's pathological with me. I'm sorry.
But well, here's the thing. I happen to have some privilege and know that there's that maybe the Britisher has a bird. But I did notice that in your castle, the bird makes no sound. It seems like it would echo through the corridors. So you must have that thing trained very well indeed, Brett. No comment.
You know, I mean, my computer sort of being up in the furthest tower, you know, sound can't quite carry that far.
Okay, and then this reminds me of Wide Smile when he started out by asking me about my guitars and stuff, boys. So I'm going to say the same thing. I can't just be cool right now. It was a nice pre-hangout. Mrs. Seeliger, we certainly hope that we get a chance to talk to you some more before and after. But now I'm going to act like that we have a show here. So I'm just so happy today to be here with my co-host, as always, the Britisher.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
And then the common sense guy.
Good evening, all.
And then we are so happy, as I said before, we have a very special guest here. We have Zoon Politikon, the political animal, Holly Seeliger, a very wonderful lady. I just saw her on Cabin Talk, I want to say it was, and just a nice little thing where some Yankees from way up yonder got together and had a little chin wag. I was really impressed with that, Holly.
Yeah, hi, Ogre. Yeah, I just drove back from Vermont and out in the cabin in the woods and got to meet some other New England YouTubers and we had a nice time. It was nice to chat with some people in person. And yes, we streamed it online.
We know each other here, so why don't, if you don't mind, why don't you take for the introductions? Why don't you take your little bit of time right here and if you care to tell us about that experience? What'd you learn? What'd you do? How was it?
So yeah, I've been doing YouTube for about almost close to a year and a half, and I was writing before that, and just sharing my work around. And I had some of my viewers say, "Oh, you need to meet this woman named Claudia. She's originally from Germany, and she has a channel called Cabin Talk." And she was also friends with a lady called Sane Progressive. And then there was a man named Tatsu, who's from Japan, and Gerard, who is mostly a marijuana advocate. So we all got together. Yeah, it was fun. And it was a lot of driving. I should have stayed another day, but we did a 4-hour live stream and I was exhausted, but it was good. We talked about everything and I got some new subs.
Yeah, I haven't got through the whole thing, but I watched a good chunk of that yesterday and today. I will just say this: when I hear Claudia, I know that you're a fan. So if I was to say this name to you, Claudia E. Inez Bachmann, do you know who that would be?
No, I don't.
Well, Claudia E. Inez Bachmann would be the wife of Richard Bachman, who is the pseudonym.
Yeah,
who is the pseudonym of Stephen King. So Claudia E. Inez Bachmann is a made-up person that seemed to be so real to me at one time, because I read all I mean, it's a long story. I was one of the people fooled by that, though. I read The Long Walk, and I think I even got through about half of The Running Man, and I'd already read Rage and a couple others before I realized by the media. And look, I think I'm getting off in the weeds too, and I'll just get, it's Maine, boys. It's an American thing, and it's also just a Stephen King thing. When I watch Holly's videos, she's very often, it's so cool to throw in some neat things about the town she's from, and she shows you the harbor, and she goes to some old graveyards. I've seen her at some little like waterfalls out in the woods. I've also seen you at a school, young lady, and if I remember right, you went from the graveyard to the school, and you went to the same school as Stephen King. So I was just trying to be cool.
Yeah, it's a small world, and when I went up to Vermont, it's pretty similar. You know, it's There were times where I was driving on some dirt roads and I was like, oh goodness, where am I?
Waiting for Mrs. Todd's shortcut. Another deep Stephen King cut for those of you that care to know. Well, I tell you, I'm going to nerd right out. So I don't know, folks. We can. I almost feel like I should. I want to ask the common sense guy, but we'll save it for Wednesday about the video he just did today. But before we just get right into the show proper, what's been on your mind politically? Maybe that we can kick it around with the boys for a few minutes. What's been going on? What's been shocking your world? What do you think is the changes, the moves, the shuffles, the shakes, the earthquakes?
Well, I haven't really been following this too well, but there's been a lot of YouTubers talking about some sort of bizarre sealed indictments that have been cycling around, a rumor about a bunch of people who are supposed to be arrested pretty soon. And that could include the Podestas and a lot of people on the right and left, it seems like. I mean, we're all hoping here in the United States. I mean, things are obviously pretty crazy, and a lot of us are still holding out some sort of hope that we're going to have some sort of justice between all of the electoral rigging that was obvious this past election, and also just the connection between that and a bunch of Saudi princes being arrested, including good old Bandar Bush.
Bandar Bush. I watched your whole video on it. But before we go off on that, the first thing you just mentioned, and I want to cut the boys loose on you a little bit if I can. I'm sure they'll have opinions. Is there a possibility that holy shit, I just had a brain fart. The first part of that, what the hell were we just talking about, boys? I've seriously just had a brain seizure trying to keep two things going on.
Saudis?
Yeah, no, the first part there, Hollywood. Yeah, now isn't it better, because this is what I got to say is a tough thing to say, and maybe that's why I just couldn't spit it out and I blocked it out mentally. But is this a thing? And now to make it clear for everybody else, if I didn't throw them off, when we think about the rigging and let's forget about Trump's Russia thing, because now with the special counsel it'd be tampering and all this stuff. But when it comes to the Podestas, to play devil's advocate and to make it easy, would it be better to leave sleeping dogs lie at this point? You know, I don't know how else to say it.
Well, if you ask me on this point, no, if you're going to drug up things about different people, then as soon as there's an allegation about yourself, you're going to have to clear your name. And that's just the way that life is. If you're going to throw mud on somebody else, expect mud to be thrown on you. You're going to have to defend your position. And if there's more evidence to say that you've done wrong, then you should go to prison. To me, that's just as simple as it is. Can't be any more simple.
So that's definitely one for no. Don't let sleeping dogs lie.
Well, my answer to that would be, from your sort of general impression, Ms. Roga, what do you think? Do you think the Americans are quite proud of their democracy?
That's a bigger question I think you meant to ask me, and I don't know where you want me to go with it, but I'll be honest, I would like to think yes, but for the bigger, larger part now.
Therefore, if they're proud of their democracy, if they're proud of the standards their democracy sets, then shouldn't there actually be something to actually make sure that those standards are maintained?
Oh, yeah. Okay, I see where you're going. Yes.
The answer to somebody just basically riding roughshod across all the rules, if the answer to that simply is, oh well, let's just let sleeping dogs lie, what are you actually what are you saying to every other politician in the country?
Well, but we work this way.
We won't hold you to account.
We worked this way for so long, and I don't want to suck up the air. I want to know what Holly thinks about this too. We worked this way for so long. I mean, Kennedy had back problems. He slept with a bunch of girls. He took all these drugs. All these, FD. There were a lot of. I mean, we had all these problems. I was going to spit out about 10 more, but I don't want to besmirch our presidents. It's things that we know now we didn't know then. Was it better then? And that's what I mean by let sleeping dogs lie. Who would benefit and why do we want to bust the Podestas? And Lord knows, watch my channel. I'm playing devil's advocate. I've done 3 things on Pizzagate. Holly, if you got anything on that, if I didn't do it injustice.
I just, with the people that I visited this weekend in Vermont, a lot of them were, obviously former Bernie supporters, or to a degree still enjoying a lot of Bernie Sanders, like the movement, let's just say. So Bernie Sanders is the senator from Vermont, so, and it's a small state, so everyone knows about Bernie Sanders, and there was so much support for him within the quote progressive movement that these YouTubers that I've met with are they're pretty awake to the fact that the whole thing was rigged. And in fact, that's how they grew their audience, was they were live streaming and recording the fraud as it was happening. And, we've been told in America that was a conspiracy theory, that the fraud was not occurring at all, but they were filming it state by state, the election rigging. And so I think there's still a lot of anger within U.S. politics. And yes, I do think Americans, we still hold out to a strong degree that our political system is the correct way that we hold our country together, is through a political system. And if we don't have justice, then what do we have left?
No, you're definitely right there. I'd just like to add a point on this. If you've got to the point where you obviously feel that democracy is good in any country, especially obviously yours and ours, if you cannot hold the people that are supposed to be leading your country and leading your, should we say, leading your pies, I'll put it as easy as that. If you cannot hold those type of people to account and hold them to account properly for anything that they've done or do, rather, and that doesn't mean anything that happens so far in their past, like 10, 15 years or anything else like that, but while they've been in Parliament or while they've been part of government process. If they've done something, then they need to be prosecuted for it. You cannot hold people up that are supposed to be the pinnacle of your government and then go, well, you've done something wrong. Here you go, have a pension, and you just go into the background. Just be quiet a little bit. No, if you want to make an actual political statement and somebody's done something wrong and there's corruption in your place, you have to take out the trash, so to speak. You have to show it. You have to do it.
Well, if I could just, because you've just reminded me of something there, and that is that during the Napoleonic Wars, the British fleet was highly superior to that of the French, and more so, they were extremely aggressive. The British were kind of they stood apart by the fact that they would at times be almost suicidally aggressive. That frigates would just go into enemy ports and cut out a French frigate, basically take it over and sail it out together with their frigate. That's despite there being shore batteries and whatever else. How did that come about? How did you make the officer class so dedicated that they would be willing to risk their lives, that of their crews and everything, in order to, as they would put it, do their duty?
Drugs.
And that some years before the Napoleonic Wars, there had been some minor engagement somewhere off the Balearic Isles, and it was deemed that an admiral who had commanded a part of the flotilla had not done his utmost to secure victory. And that led to a very controversial case. And of course, it became controversial due to the fact that the admiral was condemned to death, because they decided, if it's the death penalty for the ordinary man for not doing his duty to the utmost, then it's the same for the highest officer who's there. So they actually placed an admiral in front of a firing squad and shot him.
And make sure you draw this in for everybody that might just be joining. So what does this have to do with not just letting sleeping dogs lie when it comes to the podestas or whoever, Trump, whoever's involved in dirty dealings in the election?
Raised the standard. The fact that you basically were willing to take down the highest, basically you would shoot an admiral, basically set an example to all the officers of the Royal Navy, as in, we expect you to do your darndest. We don't really care so much if you fear for your life. You will try everything to defeat the enemy.
Yes.
And that's exactly what they did, because they knew from that example that they were willing to take down the highest office of all. And if you can set that example within politics, you get the same result. If you want honest politicians, then you have to be willing to demonstrate to the Scott Preslers that you're willing to take down anyone, whether they're in the White House, whether they're the head of the Democratic Party, whoever it is.
Yeah, and it's getting more and more, Britt, because Britisher, with all due respect, when you steadfast, and I firmly believe it's just to get my goat, call me a righty. I mean, and then people consider Holly a lefty. Holly, I don't have to ask you. You're not a lefty. I don't think you consider yourself one. I think you consider yourself a reasonable human being with logic and you know what I mean? The scientific method, empirical evidence on your side, the ability to look at these things. And what I do see happening, folks, is that there are more and more people coalescing on both sides. And Britisher, you pointed out, and not to just keep it at the Brit, but you did point out that it seems like on the right side, it's a money thing. There are more and more people that are just signing up, and whether they believe it or not, pretending to be this thing. And yeah, we need to take the head off the serpent. I know I'm getting off in the weeds too. I just realized I'm going off into this Britisher panel, common sense guy, Holly, that it's kind of off into the weeds.
Well, you know, I've been called right and left. You know, leftist people look at me and they're like, aren't you right wing or aren't you conservative? And I just don't think those terms really mean anything anymore. It's really hard. I mean,
well, I think with respect, I think they do still mean something. I think one of the problems is that you are finding more and more people who are so far off to the left and the right. I mean, really far off to the left and the right. So that anybody who is really a run-of-the-mill conservative, to many of those right-wingers, is way far to the left. Do you understand what I mean?
I sure do.
So I think one of the reasons that we're getting these accusations is not really just because everyone is so wonderfully centrist, because I think one of the impressions you do get is that a lot of people, you know, will always claim of themselves that they're centrist. I'm the center of the universe. Everyone else is to the right and the left of me. But when you see how polarized things have become, and I mean, you know, we are now looking at people at one side standing with Antifa, and on the other side standing, you know, with Richard Spencer and whatever. And if you know, from their perspective, everything is just always, you know, on the extreme side in the opposite direction. And I think that's more the problem, that we're getting, as the ogre said, people coalescing on the right and the left. But what is so remarkable is they're not sort of coalescing to the right of center or to the left of center. They're coalescing beyond those points. And that's what I find somewhat worrying.
Anyone else?
Oh, I suppose to go on to the terms of what Britisher and what Holly have been speaking about, as in the terms of what we would classify people. I've been called a libertarian, I've been called a neoliberalism, I've been called neo-libertarian. That everybody has different names for different things. I think it's more of a point that the people that are necessarily describing themselves, as well as other people that are also describing them, may want to be called something rather than actually being something. I think that's something. We all don't want to be called the left anymore. I mean, all libertarians are supposed to be left-sided of the political spectrum, but yet we don't want to be called left anymore. So we say, no, we're libertarian. So it's a case of, well, no, you're left. It doesn't really matter anymore. You have to be what you are, rather than trying to conflate the actual issue of saying, well, left now means something bad. No, it doesn't. It means that if you're a social justice warrior and you believe in all that sort of stuff, that's bad to a point. Same as if you go too far right, that's bad. it all depends on what you actually are supposed to be calling yourself and what you have the understanding to call other people.
But doesn't it really depend on what aspects of left and right you actually look at? I mean, when it comes to libertarian, I wouldn't even say that is an issue of left and right. That, as far as I'm concerned, is more of an issue of authoritarian versus libertarian, if you know what I mean.
They say out in left field, but it doesn't mean left in the same way.
But even with left and right, there seems to be, in a way, different ways of measuring them. So, for example, when it comes to there is a social left and there is a social right. When it comes to the issues of how shall we say, sort of morality, whereas at the same time there is an economic left and an economic right, when it's just down to sort of brass taxes, so to speak. So in a way, there are different types of left and right that we kind of recognize. So when we would say the right is against abortion and the left is in favor of abortion, we're not really talking about economics, are we? We're not talking about unemployment figures and tax rates. So in that regard, I think there are different aspects to that issue of left and right. And that is where I think it is possible for somebody to be perhaps centrist when it comes to the social issues, but right or left when it comes to economic issues, and vice versa. So I think that's where there can be also a difference when people can sort of say, oh, well, I'm a centrist, but they're only actually referring to one of those aspects, whereas in one of the other aspects, they might be quite strongly right or strongly left.
Right.
So
yeah, which is literally what I said. Yeah, which is literally what I said. It depends on your own personal definitions and what people are going to define you as. That's what the labels are.
It's figuratively. Well, yes, it's figuratively what you said, because he didn't say the exact same words.
But yes. In the end, it in a way the moniker still holds. There is a right and there is a left.
Because I didn't dispel that.
No, I know. But from a lot of people, one gets the message these days. Oh, well, you see, that doesn't really apply to me anymore. I don't think right and left is really a thing. And I think right and left is still very much a thing.
Same here.
Yeah, and let me say very quickly, Goen Uper is just a really good friend of mine. I'm going to give some other plugs here as the show rolls on. But Goen Uper just said, just wanted to stop in and say, y'all are amazing, far too kind. I think we could all agree on that. Y'all are amazing people. Ogre, my friend, sorry I have not been around. As of late, I have been working on an auction to help fight childhood cancer. And this is not the kind of person to joke. It's on his channel. He left everything he knew in Florida to come up to the UP of Michigan, which is more rugged than where I'm at. It makes where I'm at kind of look like Florida looks from here. And to be with his, I don't want to mess this up, Uper, it's been a while, in-laws. I'm not sure if it was his sister's children. I want to believe it was his sister's, if not his wife's children. Their parents were killed in a car accident, left everything to go take care of them. So that's it for that. I don't want to make too much of it, but you can see his name there. You can see Goen Uper, and you all will.
I'm very disappointed with that posting. I expected at least to, at the bottom of it, for it in parentheses to say, and I agree with the Britisher.
Well, it might have got him like 10 quid for the cancer children. No, I shouldn't have said that. It was too terrible of a joke, too evil of a joke. No, but all I can say is that we will expect everyone to come directly back when they hit the little thing that says go to channel and go and sub to Goen Uper, and then go check it out. He's got some great videos. He really does. Riding motorcycles. He's got snakes. He's got all kinds of cool things selling. And then look, like I said, boys, that was probably enough. Thank you so much for swinging by, Goen Uper.
But by the way, since we're sort of drifting away from that subject a bit, did any of you catch the ceremony at the cenotaph that we had this weekend?
Yes, with the Queen.
The armistice.
Yeah. The Queen cried. The Queen shed a tear. I seen.
Yeah,
there.
Prince Charles, of course, laid down her wreath because with her now being of somewhat advanced age, it was deemed that, well, yes, it's perhaps a little beyond her by now to be expected to stand there in the cold and then bend over to lay a wreath. So Prince Charles, in what looked like almost slow motion, kind of stepped forward to lay down a wreath at the cenotaph, and the wind was just blowing a little awkwardly, so much so that the wreath was kind of teetering, and everyone thought, is it going to blow over? And while he was kind of trying to balance it, I was desperately waiting, because of course during that moment there's complete silence. You would be able to hear a pin drop, and I was just desperately waiting for that little female voice to come from the balcony going, "You're doing it wrong." But sadly, she disappointed.
Pretty sure I thought that
everybody.
was going to be. I thought that was going to be reverent. I thought you were going to say something reverent, not mock the royal family.
But yeah, sadly, she let us all down. It would have been an immortal moment. But yeah, she let him off.
This from the man that wants her to get the hell out of Buckingham Palace.
Oh, here we go again.
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. No, we can't go off too far.
Violent slurs being spread about.
No chance to defend yourself, Brett, because we do have a guest here that would not get all the inside jokes, and we have not time to explain them all. But very funny, very good. I would say this when I look before we move on, because Holly, do you even know what we're talking about? Do you care? Is it?
The only thing that I know recently about the Queen is her connection to the Paradise Papers, which
that's what
looked into.
And that's what it is. You mentioned the City of London. You said everything ties back to the city, not London, the City of London. And I'm sorry, I was saying something before. Yeah, you're deep, girl. You know some stuff that most people don't know. I would just say that. So she's, in other words, you believe that her throne sits on the cornerstone from the Great Pyramid of Giza, and she's the Ptolemies reborn, and the lizard, all that stuff.
The cornerstone of the Great Pyramid of Giza.
Yeah, they actually say this
the stone of Scone.
Well, they say that it's the stone that Jacob laid his head on when he's seen the angels, Jacob's ladder. They say all kinds of stuff about that stone, Britt. And it's in scholarly papers where they say some of the things, but they're so contradictory, one never knows.
Well, I think it would be quite easy to work out, for example, what type of rock it's made of. I'm quite sure it won't be.
So go get a sample.
Stone.
See if they'll let you go get a sample to check that out, Brett. Because a lot of people would love that, but they're not letting anyone go in and take scratchings of the cornerstone, whatever it is.
I think I got to see the stone of Scone when they were showing it on the BBC, when they were moving it back to Scotland, because it had always been held in England, but then with the Scots getting Bolshire and Bolshire with Alex Salmond and then Nicola Sturgeon, they decided to pander to them by moving the stone of Scone to Scotland. So
from a salmon to a sturgeon.
Yeah, precisely. So should it be needed for another coronation, the stone will have to be moved down to London. And yeah, just from what I saw there with the moving it about, it didn't look very Egyptian.
And we did it, boys. We did it. We again, girls. But Holly, I'm old and I'm so set in my ways I can't change now. So when I say boys, I mean you two.
Guys works.
It's all good, guys. It's whenever I say all y'all, it's
quite a lot of practice of using that particular word recently. Yes.
So you're just British? Are you dead set on not getting onto the sociology stuff? Because if you are, we could go right on to that. Because I'd love that, and I guarantee you, Miss Holly.
By all means, let's go on to the.
No, we can't now. We can't now because I want to hear what Miss Holly thought about that shouting, offensive debauch of whatever it was. And so, what were you talking about, Brett?
Well, I mean, Mr. Rubin had a slight problem of keeping Blair White and Red Pill Black under control as they started tearing chunks out of each other. I thought the comedy gold was not so much the two of them. It was him. It was that absolutely, destroyed look on his face. You could really see he was sort of thinking, when is this going to end? How much longer do I have to sit here?
The American Britisher.
Right now.
The American Britisher. And you could see him. He was like, now, wait, now. And he's looking, he almost looked like one of those cartoons that has a head here, a face here, and a face here. Like he's trying to tell them, because they're both, oh my gracious. I'm sorry, Holly, because I know we all got opinions, but let's remember who the host is. That goes for me the most. Holly, what'd you think about that? We want to know.
So I did listen to the Britishers' analysis of the event. I had heard about the interview on Twitter before I had actually watched it. The Rubin Report. If people don't know, it was Red Pill Black, and was debating Blair White. And well, I do remember that I was supposed to be on your channel. I don't know, maybe that was like 6 months ago now at this point.
No.
Blair White was going to be on the channel, and that fell through, which I was a little bit upset. But pardon my ignorance, I actually did not know that Blair White was transgendered until Red Pill Black just started in. Like, the first thing that she said is, I'm going to call you a man, basically.
Wait, you knew it on the channel? Because I knew that you were. That's funny that this came up, because everybody here except for Common Sense Guy was there that night. And I've never got a comment back from her. She actually communicated with me for a week. We had everything planned. Never got a response as to why it was canceled. Sorry, don't
ghosted,
care.
I think.
Who knows? It was so weird. Yeah. We were going on when the Britishers sent a link to a thing where she was on a live stream with somebody else at the exact same time. It was incredible. But that aside, I mean, there's no hard feelings.
No. And obviously, I actually did not really finish that whole interview. I think I didn't watch it. I was just having like PTSD, just thinking about like women in my family arguing in the past.
If you had PTSD, imagine what it must have been like for the poor sod who was sitting between the two of them.
Oh Lord, Rubens looked like he wanted to just bloody die. It is. Like you said, Britt,
he looked scared.
He wanted to be somewhere else, that's for sure.
I'm getting a strong impression that neither of the two of them are going to be back for an interview with him anytime soon.
Well, I think that because they even said at the beginning that Blair was her third time, and there's very few people that have been on the Rubin show 3 times. And then she said something about a 4th. I bet that Blair will be on within a month and a half. But I don't know if the other girl, Red Pill Black, and look, now I'm honest, the way the society is, I'm like, oh, people think I'm racist. That girl was so horrifically offensive.
She was scary. I was scared.
I thought she was going to beat Blair's ass. Yeah, I really did. And I don't think that Blair could have, because I know Blair's got the meat and veg boys, and girls, but I know that also, I think that chick would have beat Blair's ass. That's if I had to bet on it, if they were going to go out in the backyard and fight, I would be like, I got 50 on the black chick.
It just instantly degraded. I mean, there was nothing. I mean, I was surprised he even aired it, honestly. I mean, nothing against Rubin. I mean, it was just the way that it went down. I mean, I would have called it a wash if that had happened on my channel personally.
Well, you and Brett get along good, because Britisher, what would you have done if this would have been on your channel? Would you have published it?
No.
Yeah, I know you. And if you would have said anything else, then I know you're not a liar. So no, you're not in bad company here, Holly. It was just what it came down to was. I seen somebody juxtapose it to like 2 cats fighting. Literally, honestly, just going at it.
Hey, we have more dignity than that.
Well, I think, what's he called? Is it Rucker Ali or whatever? I might be getting his name wrong, but he did a wonderful sort of musical number on it. I saw it on Twitter, and I was really in fits seeing that. Perhaps someone in the chat knows what his proper name is, because I'm garbling this. I'm sure
it's Rucker. I know what you're talking about too. I'll see if I can find a link.
But
no, and look, boys, we're going to get to this pretty soon. I thought that was funny. I also thought that Red Pill Black. Look, I'm going to speak from experience. If you take pictures, speaking of the night that Blair White stood us all up, if you take pictures of somebody that gets drunk and after chat with some friends, and some good-looking young girl eggs somebody on, not like a Louis C.K. thing, to like, whip it out. And you got some fat older guy here being told by a younger, whip it out, and then he does. There, okay. I'm sorry, and we're moving right along.
Let's try some sociology, ladies and gentlemen, shall we?
That was so I'm sorry.
You lost me there.
It's kind of, I'm gonna have to recover from that. That's good. Look, we're gonna, as the producers, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm gonna compose. Yeah. I'm just gonna compose myself as quickly as I possibly can after that. So the bell worked out very nicely, didn't it, mates? So we were talking about, what I did was I made a little show map, and now we'll go into the show proper. And what we'll do, Miss Holly, is we're going to talk about these subjects. I think you've got a little time to look at them. I know this wasn't I'm sorry, it wasn't a homework assignment. Oh, I'm usually really good at just putting things behind me. Okay, so it wasn't a homework assignment or anything like that. It was just, we're looking at these ideas that, as I said in I can't now remember if it was the pre-hangout or if it was this show proper that we're on. There's a few schools of psychology. You have behavioralism. You have cognitive therapy. You have psychoanalytics. You have it comes down to about 7, and I don't have them popped up right now. And Lord knows, because of the diploma on the back. Well, I should know all 7 of them off the top of my head. I'm still trying not to laugh. So there are just a few schools of psychology. Now, I'm not saying that makes it more real, more scientific, but once you get into sociology, you have quite a lot of schools of thought. And in my hypothesis, as we start, Holly, with you, what I hope to be will be, 3. We'll see with my co-host how this goes, and we'll see how it goes. But I hope this will be a 3 or 4 part little deal that we do with some other people like yourself that we consider to be intelligent, and but maybe didn't go to school and get mucked up with the whole idea of sociology and psychology. Because let's remember, it's a very short step from psychology to eugenics. It's a very short step from Edward Bernays. He just took a short step from his cousin, Sigmund Freud. It's all these things are interconnected, can be used for good or can be used for bad. So that said, hope I don't want to take up too much oxygen, boys and girls. And I know that I said I would. The only reason I gave that disclaimer, Holly, is because I'm so used to just saying boys. I didn't want you to think I was being sexist. It's such a tough world we live in nowadays. Really
I'm so offended.
Nah, I doubt it. But but I tell you what. Why don't I do this? Let me start out by reading this first one that I have here. I'm going to have to pop my glasses down here. I might actually have to pull it up, too. It might be a good idea. Did I send this to anybody? I think I sent it to you, didn't I, Brett? Hang on a second.
To myself and the Common Sense guy. I'm not sure whether you've sent it to Holly or not.
Yeah, I think I actually... No, I got it right here. I sent it right to Holly, and we haven't talked much, so that's really perfect, Holly, this time. So I'm going to start out by saying, look, is the reason... My idea behind doing this is to find out, is there more schools of thought in sociology because more people want to control society? Because when people go away from counting things, which is what sociology is, that's why I'm not a sociologist. You have social scientists, which are basically social psychologists. And you have sociologists. Sociologists, they count things. They don't ask questions like, I wonder why or how people feel. They say, we looked at 10,000 people who smoked Marlboros and 10,000 people who never touched them. And 75% more people that smoked Marlboros died of lung cancer. And they put them numbers in there. They tell you statistics. Let's remember, there's liars, damn liars, and statistics. I've heard statisticians, but again, in sociology years ago, I had one of my teachers say, ooh, statistics, not statistics, because she was a statistician. She was a sociologist. But now we've had this branching out in British. I hope you started my 3 minutes because I got to be getting close to the end of it. And I need to start reading this when we look at sociology, there are so many more schools. And as I said, I wonder if it's because people want to control it. So the first one we're going to look at here, folks, and we can go down after I do the first one. If anyone wants to pick one after we beat the first one up, even if we get through it, it doesn't matter. There's no time limit. It's only that everyone gets a chance to express an idea on this overarching sociological idea. That's when we'll be done. It doesn't matter if it takes today or tomorrow or the next day or whenever. No rush on this. So I hope that was good, Britt. And if your timer was going, just cancel it and I'll read this. And I do believe that I'll put you on the spot, Common Sense, and I'm going to pop this off to you to start with, brother. And then we'll go to the Britisher, and then we'll wrap up with our guest and give her plenty of time to get her ideas together. Think of her own and give hers. For me, Britt, again, if you're going to set mine for 3, I'll only pipe in at the end of this if I need to, and we'll move on. So conflict theory is the first thing we're going to look at. Conflict theory. Let's remember, as I said, you have behavioralism, you have psychoanalytics, you have all these schools. These are schools of thought of sociology. So we're going to start with conflict theory. Conflict theory emphasizes the role of correction and power. Coercion. And I should get glasses, folks. Conflict theory emphasizes the role of coercion and power and producing social order. This perspective is derived from the works of Karl Marx, who saw society as fragmented into groups that compete for social and economic resources. Social order is maintained by domination, with power in the hands of those with the greatest political, economic, and social resources. So I don't think you'll need much prodding. What do you think about that? Does that sound like a good thing, Common Sense?
There's no easy way of just giving an answer of saying yes, it's good or yes, it's bad. So let's take the idea of conflict theory apart, shall we? The main point of conflict theory is to be able to produce one point of a demographic to go against another point of a demographic. For instance, having the poor go against the bourgeoisie, as in trying to get rid of everybody for whatever reasons, because they're the ones that hold the key to their universes, apparently. But that's the point of conflict theory, where you put one demographic against the other to be able to control the other point by saying, if you don't do this, then this set of group and this ideology is going to hurt your ideology, blah, blah, blah. So when it comes to the point of the political point, shall we say, it then comes to the point of going, well, I don't believe in the ideology of socialism or Marxism in this case. But unfortunately, because we're involved in that point and they're the ones with the guns and the ones that are oppressing us and they have the numbers, we're the ones that are going to have to deal with that as a point. That's the end of conflict theory, as in the point of we will use what we have to be able to tell other people what to do. To be honest, I don't really have much else to say on the idea of conflict theory, because to me, it's pretty much explained. It's basically people telling other people what to do because they're either bigger, stronger, or they have more people.
Well, before I let you off the hook, because you got a minute and a half left, so very quickly, let me ask you a question in Common Sense before I let you off the hook. Do you see conflict theory in, and this would go for everyone else in your idea, would you see it being exercised today, and if so, in what way?
I suppose it is being exercised today. You could say that the ideology of the School of Frankfurt is still being adapted. Some people would classify it as cultural Marxism nowadays, the ideology of that. You can quite easily take classical Marxism, which is basically the idea of conflict theory. You can then adapt it to minorities instead of cultural standings, as in different class standings. So you could quite easily change that, as in the Muslims are now being oppressed, so now all Christians need to be oppressed instead. You could do something like that. So that's one point you could go through. The idea of conflict theory, you can use it for anything. You can use it to go for any demographic. It's not a case of necessarily the rich versus the poor, or the politicians versus the normal people, the Democrats or whatever, or the Republicans versus the Democrats. It doesn't matter about that. It can be something as simple as whites versus the blacks. it's something that simple. You can quite easily turn conflict theory into that. Unfortunately for me, as I said, conflict theory to me is interesting talking about, but not in practice.
Yep. And I think you heard that. And I just will say, I know I'm getting to know you so well, mate. You actually hit right on the head of the nail that I hoped you would. So, Britisher, I'm going to pass it right on to you and give you the same 3 minutes. And if it didn't prime the pump, Brett, hey, this is like nothing else. And this goes for you too, Holly, for myself, anybody else. If it don't prime the pump, if it's just saying your cup of tea, as Britt, you've already mentioned, yeah, you say what you got. I mean, there's always an answer is I don't know, or this is how I think, or I think it's bollocks. All of those things are reasonable.
Well, I mean, it's hard to say that it's bollocks, because I think to a certain extent we have got historical precedence of it having been the case. But the question, as I say, I don't think in and of itself it is just right or wrong. It's more a matter of what you actually apply it to. And I think, you know, if you look back, I mean, you know that I always like going back to the Roman Empire, you know. When you look at the early history of the Roman Republic, that is for much of its history, for a greater part of the history of the Roman Republic, you are talking of what they call the conflict of the orders, where effectively the plebeians and the patricians were, you know, vying for supremacy. So the patricians had everything right at the start of the Republic. They held all the power. Only they could be senators. Only they could hold all the positions. And then gradually over time, that franchise was extended to the plebeians, but it took a long, long time. And it took several times when effectively the Roman population just went on strike and just left. So we know that in a way, these kind of conflicts exist. The problem is once you start applying it to everything you see around you, particularly when you start applying it to identity politics, and it's women against men, and it's blacks against whites, and it's, you know, or it's everyone against white men. It's when you start thinking of it in those terms that you just basically begin losing your mind. But when it comes to in its purest form, you know, have the rich got what the poor want? Yes. Do the rich want to give the poor that? No, because otherwise they're no longer rich. So in that respect, yes, of course there is some truth to it, but it's just not universally applicable. That would really be what I would have to say on it.
Well, that's perfect. And a little bit more time left, but Holly, what we'll do is we'll just keep going right down the thing. I think I'm going to just slip it to 4. And Holly, it's not because you can see that 3 minutes is a little bit of time. And I don't know if you're used to this or not, but we do this to just, I know there's silence and there's not a lot of crosstalk, but that's why we do it. It's so that everyone has a chance to have their little bit of what they want to say without anybody else just sticking a knife in and, you know, seeing if it's done. So Holly, what you got to say?
No, this is cool. I mean, everyone's brought up some interesting points about conflict theory, and just you know, that's why it's fun to talk with other people, because you always see something from a different perspective. So, you know, I think conflict theory, I mean, I don't know if it was originally put together by Marx or not, but you know, obviously people, if anyone's been following my channel or my work at all, I definitely think that they're, you know, even going back to, like what Britisher said, to Roman times or before, there's always been a class of rulers, and it's basically his conflict theory is about, you know, one group of people controlling resources over another, and that's it's about a battle for limited resources, and it's about the idea of scarcity, and, you know, whether that is real or controlled, and creating a demand in the market, so limited availability of a commodity. And so conflict theory is that there's we're in a state of perpetual conflict, you know, Marx says, between classes, due to competition for limited resources. So that's when, you know, it starts to get into the idea of scarcity, whether real or created. And, you know, just reminds me as well of, you know, eugenics or controlling. And, you know, I'm not a Marxist, but I think there's some truth to some of that. And then people have just taken it from there.
Oh, you have lots of time. You have lots of time left. But what I want to do is, so I keep this fresh and good, I'm going to keep the timer going. But that was great. Because again, if we all go 3 minutes, it's 9 between you three. So I'm just going to try to keep asking questions. When we think of this, is this a coincidence? Because you said something very poignant there, Holly, that, you know, there was some truth in Marxism. Of course there is. But I could also hand you a glass of water and say, this water is 99% pure, and the other 1% could be arsenic. And if you drank it, you'd be dead. Well, I don't know, 1% strychnine. If 1% was strychnine, you'd be dead. So I'm not sure what the LD50 is on arsenic. Anyway, to keep this right on point, is it a coincidence that, and this is Britisher, I want to start with the Britisher because, well, maybe not. No, I'm going to, because Brit, I don't want to, for one thing, I want to keep you off balance because I think this will be the thing that you'll be able to speak most to. Is it a coincidence that when we look at conflict theory and we see this idea of haves and have-nots, the bourgeoisie we've already spoke about, is it coincidence that now we have this big push against black and white? Common Sense guy had mentioned Muslims because in his country it's a big Muslim thing. Is that, or is this another outworking of Marxism being applied in a different way by new Marxists that do hold Marxist ideals? So, Britt, if that's not too convoluted, I'll start with you.
Well, I mean, I don't know whether it's... This is one of the things that quite a few people sort of say, well, it's Marxism, you know, they speak of cultural Marxism, that it's just Marxism kind of transmuted and moved forward. I'm not sure whether that really is the case, that it's just basically the Marxists that have reinvented themselves, or whether Marxists have just found something else that is in a way similar in its nature, and therefore it is attractive to them, given that so that would in a way make it less conspiratorial, that it's just something that they're kind of clinging to because it's similar to something they already loved, but eventually common sense told them just doesn't work. It may well be that it's something like that rather than a kind of conspiracy, as in how can we dress Marxism up in order to sell it to the people nonetheless, even though they've all been convinced by now that it doesn't work. But as I say, I think one of the problems is that once things like this conflict theory, as you describe it, once they are applied to other issues, once you're effectively setting groups against each other, you are letting loose something that should be kept, well locked away. It's bad enough when you have a conflict of the orders, so to speak, but to a certain extent there is at least a certain logic to it. Basically, the poor basically not wanting to be poor, the poor effectively looking out for their own children. I mean, who can blame them for that? But when it's a matter of setting various groups against each other, it entails trying to first create a narrative whereby the various groups are given to understand that they have a grievance.
I pause your time, Britt. Please, I know I want you to carry on, but
let them loose on each other, if you know what I mean.
What did you mean by best left alone? I was really hoping to cut in there at a good time, and I paused your time about 20 seconds ago or so. What did you mean when you said best left alone?
Well, these things are not issues. These are not things that you stoke up, if you know what I mean, because you are effectively, by applying conflict theory to areas like race, you are effectively stoking up, racial tensions, and that is inherently not a good thing to do. whether it is the left that is doing it or whether it is the right that is doing it. What is very, very worrying in this case is that we can see that the left started doing it, but now the right has responded in kind. You know, when people were talking about Charlottesville, everyone was talking about, oh, the Nazis, the Nazis. Well, yes, it was a reaction to what had gone before. And that must be understood, that had there not been this absolutely obnoxious Black Lives Matter movement going on for months, if not years, then there more than likely would not have been a Charlottesville. It would simply just have been a few, a few people out on the fringes all on their own. They would never have managed to muster the numbers. So that's what I mean with it's best left alone.
Well said, sir. Thank you so much. And so I'm just going to keep kicking it down. And Holly, unless you want to go now, I'm always going to leave you for last so that you can hear what everybody says. Unless you want to go now, you're more than welcome to take your time at this moment. As the guest, you know, you're special to us tonight.
Very. So just to respond to Britisher on that, yeah, I wonder if I suppose conflict theory could be connected to race. I'm trying to remember the name of that term now. It's called intersectionality. Everyone's that's
intersectionality. Yes.
Yeah, the big buzzword where it's like, you know, everything's connected to each other now. But when I think of conflict theory, I traditionally think about different social classes and the conflict between classes and the control of classes. But I know it's not that simple, of course, but just I think when I think of conflict theory, I think about class and how our classes are used to control the resource allocation or control. And maybe I am wrong. Maybe I could be wrong. If anyone in the audience, anyone in the live chat knows more, please post.
Oh, there's no right or wrong at all, Holly, here. There's only ideas and opinions. And because on these subjects, I don't care how long you've studied, spent a lot of my time studying these subjects, there's no absolutes in these subjects. That's why I studied them, because the absolute side of the school, they wouldn't let me on that side. That's STEM. That's where they do math and stuff. Sorry, gentlemen, maths. And, if you do, as I often say, when I would wander on that side of the college, the nerds would come out and beat me away with trigonometry books. And until I would just run away and go back to the social sciences side of the college. So, and there's no bad ideas here. I was in your thing and I didn't pause it, but it sounded like you were coming to an end. We do have a good question right here. And I think that instead of getting everybody on this, Holly, I just want to ask you this, and maybe one more, boys, if that's all right with y'all. You'll let me on the side chat. If it's not, I'm sure it is. Or I wouldn't have said it. Do you think that the economic reengineering of communism has been shifted from class struggle to identity struggle? And I don't think you need any explanation of that.
I think that's most definitely on purpose. I think, not to, people call it like class warfare or whatever, like, oh, you're creating class warfare when you talk about this sort of stuff. So it's all become identity politics here. And I definitely think that's on purpose, so that we're not looking up at what's going on, especially after the 2008, the bank bailouts and everything. I think there was a brief moment here in the United States where people were saying, wait a minute, why is there a second set of laws for certain banks and, not for the common man? Why are people getting foreclosed and getting kicked out of their homes, and other people are getting rewarded for that type of behavior, subprime, and just illegal banking techniques. I'll just leave it at that.
All right. Yep.
So
we won't let you go too far that way. British, if I let you go like more than 30 seconds from there, you'll hear, "Really, Mrs. Seeliger?"
Okay. I'm prepped for that. So I think the condition has been set to focus on identity politics. I think that's most definitely been set forward and done on purpose, so that we can have the the plebeians fighting amongst each other, if you will.
But can
Perfect.
I ask here, if it's
Yes,
been
and
done
then I
on
got a
purpose,
question for you, Brett. Yeah,
if
ask.
it's been done on purpose, who has done it? I mean, who is the guiding hand? Who is actually
Oh
in
Lord, no,
control from
no.
above? Who directs that? Do you
I'm gonna give
understand?
her. I'm gonna give her one chance to answer
would
that. But Brett, we should have a whole stream about that. But go ahead, Holly.
I would say just the people who own our media, so the newspapers and our television, and just even locally here, we can look up, we can find the people who own the local newspapers here in Portland, and it's international.
Why would the billionaires who own the media be in a way changing the nature of communism to now reflect identity politics? Do you understand what I mean?
May I answer that?
Go ahead.
Can I ask you just a question in retaliation to that? In communism, what way does the process of wealth go? Does it go up or does it go down?
Well, it tends to go nowhere in communism.
No, it doesn't. It tends to go up and then sticks into the hierarchy. Look at all the czars. Look at all of the people that are in government. As in Venezuela, look how much money he had.
Okay, yeah. I mean, if you mean in terms that it's corrupt, I mean, when I say it tends to go nowhere, as in I don't think communism really generates much wealth, but yes, I mean, you in communist dictatorships, you tend to have a clique at the top that kind of establishes itself as dictators. Yes.
Yeah, which generally also increases the actual banks, for instance, and as well as the actual government in power. Meaning,
in those cliques,
isn't that in a way just the nature of dictatorship itself? I mean,
yes.
Whether you have communist dictatorship or whether you have an openly capitalist dictatorship, the dictator and his clique always help themselves to the money that's available, if you know what I mean.
You can't have a dictatorship that's capitalist. That's not a possibility. Well, I guess you can't have a dictatorship as a capitalist. I said, and then I thought, and said, I guess you can, but it's not happened. And so far that I can see is you would have to have that very wonderful thing that would be called you would have to have that very wonderful thing that would be called a benevolent dictator, or in your case, you'd have to have a monarchy that was separated with a parliament and that had checks and balances. There's no idea of
clearly a capitalist dictatorship has
there's no such thing.
I mean that's
no such thing. It's an oxymoron.
How?
Well, because if you have someone at the top telling everyone else what they can do, a dictatorship, unless it's a benevolent dictator that says, okay, I will let markets bear out equilibrium. And then look, I'm going to get off too, because listen, folks, we had some really good, but now we're actually and this will be a lot to me if we continue on this trail.
It's just a strange statement to make, but please, okay, yeah, we'll leave
no, if it's strange, Brett, I think I did back it up, but if not, I mean, I'm not trying to dodge it either, because no, you can't have a dictatorship and capitalism at the same time. You can't. At least so far, we have not had that. And to be honest, if you want me to, this might really sound crazy to you, and it'll give you a lot of ammunition, Britisher. I don't think we've ever had a true capitalism ever. And maybe that sounds Marxist to you, like somebody saying, oh, we've never had real communism, right, Britisher? You hear that all the time too. So I'm just saying, in my mind, we've never had true capitalism, anarcho-capitalism. You know that.
Yeah, but is anarcho-capitalism the only capitalism?
No, I wouldn't know, because it's never happened. Again, like I'm saying, it's never, the thing that you described has never happened. There's never been a dictatorship that was a capitalist, and that anarcho-capitalism has never happened. So the only thing I'm saying is Keynesianism, all this stuff we talked about the other day, it's utopia. And if I don't stick with this, we'll get so far off. And I would rather let you and Holly and the common sense guy either talk about what we were talking about right before that, about like the powers that be and who and why. Because Holly, man, I'll tell you, look at her hair and stuff, right? She's like a go-go dancer, and she's so cool. All the boys think she's fucking great, right? They all whistle at her. Well, look at Holly. But she's actually super duper smart. I mean, there's no shit. She really knows her stuff. I don't know where you learn this stuff, Holly. I don't know if you've just been born and started out with like None Dare Call It Conspiracy and, worked your way up to Adam Weishaupt and the lot, but you do seem to know. at least what the people in power say. And Britt, I want to make that clear too as we move along, because it's not, I don't believe a lot of this stuff. I just know what the people in power say is going on. I'm sorry, Holly, I cut you off. I'm
fascinated. I mean, I think you're right in a lot of ways. You know, I don't think we've ever, you know, we as in human history, I wonder if we've ever really had, you know, capitalism, or if we've ever really had communism, or if it is always, you know, it's been, in my opinion, just from my observation of history, it's always been controlled by oligarchs, you know, whether, you know, the people can have ideas about how things should be run. And, but I think when it comes down to it, there's you know, people who have more power and control over others. And, you know, we can have theories about how, you know, redistribution of wealth or freedom, or, but I think it always comes down to basically, you know, the invisible hand.
That's right, it does. And hey, I tell you what, folks, screw sexism. Holly, this one's for you to start with. You've probably seen it in the side chat for a minute anyway. So just to keep this all from, especially myself, trying to steer it into a realm that I know stuff about, and the British are wondering why I know. Because Brit, thank you. And Common Sense Guy, all of us here, except for probably the Brit, and I ain't trying to pick you out, British, I just know you. When we go off into all of these things, you know, come on. In fact, I'll leave it at the disclaimer. Pretty sure you heard me at the beginning. I said, hey, British will be the voice of reason. So I'll just leave it at that, and I can cut off the long diatribe. So Holly, to you, how can we get people to stop looking at the symptoms of societal problems and start looking at the disease that is causing the symptoms instead?
Well, I think, you know, I mean, people are just so conditioned. I mean, our minds are conditioned constantly, you know, through media. I think, I don't know, I think we're coming up to a different time in human history, and perhaps the internet has allowed this a little bit to a degree. I mean, I think we're being terribly censored on the internet right now, but I think, you know, versus the past couple of generations, the television generations, people were completely brainwashed in a lot of ways. And I think culture has been a tool to condition people to look only at symptoms. I mean, that's a huge question. I mean, that someone just asked.
yeah, and we'll bounce it all around. And we'll explore it a little bit more. Oh, and that was not to cut you right off. I'm just saying, you still have you got 45 seconds left. So what I'll do is I want to pass that. That's all I have to say about that. I haven't heard Common Sense voice in a minute, and I think the British will have a lot to say about this that'll be insightful. In fact, I think the Common Sense Guy will. I just haven't heard his voice. So Common Sense Guy, I'm tuning you up right now.
Can you just repeat the question for us, please? Because I was reading the chat. Sorry.
Yeah, it just says, how can we get people to stop looking at the symptoms of societal problems and start looking at the disease that is causing the symptoms instead of that?
Well, that's technically going to be a two-parter of a question. Well, an answer, rather, sorry. One, you've got to try and work out what the actual disease is. And what you perceive the disease to be may be something completely different to what I perceive the disease to be. In my humble opinion, which I may be wrong, I may be right, I don't know, but this is my opinion, I honestly believe that there is a form of what people would consider cultural Marxism. Now, I'm not saying the theory of cultural Marxism is what it is, but the idea of taking the Frankfurter School and taking that ideology of class and then changing it into identity politics, I think that is happening, and that has happened, and it will continue to happen. Somebody in the chat said that the idea of social class, the idea of class wars has now moved on to something completely different. In part, I'd agree with you. It's just a point of realizing that the social divide, as in the class divide, is not what it used to be. By that, I don't mean that, oh, well, there's no one that's poor and there's nobody that's rich. Of course there is. But we just don't look at it that way anymore. We've turned ourselves inward. And I think that is what it actually is. It's the point of we've looked ourselves inwards, and that's the reason why we can't see the disease out there anymore. We can't see what the actual problem is. And the actual problem is what we just said, the identity politics. Morgan Freeman said it best. I'm going to stop calling you a white man. You stop calling me a black man. And that's the way you get rid of identity politics. The same as what we've been throwing around with all these different labels. I'm a neo-liberalism, I'm a whatever. Who cares? These are my ideas. These are my opinions. Take me as who I am and what my opinions are, not what I'm actually trying to actually label myself as. What's your opinion on abortion? Here's my opinion on abortion. Blah, blah, blah. Do it like that. Don't do it by labels anymore. Do it by a discussion. And that's the way that you get rid of this disease. You take away the identity politics by taking discussion to the forefront rather than what you are in the background.
Oh man, that was great. I tell you what. And you know what? Before I move on and let the Britisher wrap this up, I can't believe you got this guy, this white supremacist coming on, but that's great. I shouldn't have called him that. Well, and nobody knows. So Britisher, wrap this up, man. I'm going to put your 3 minutes up. This has been working out great. He had 24 left.
First off, just in order to respond to the common sense guy, if we reject all tags, then we enter a world of utter relativism. I mean, that is the world in a way that the social justice people wish us to enter, where there are no more women, there are no more men, there is no left nor right, there is no label that is attributable to anyone anymore. You have basically removed all the structure and everything becomes quicksand. We do need labels. That is how we think. We attribute labels. That is how we identify the world around us. When it comes to the other question, that question that you put to us here, how can we get people to stop looking at the symptoms of societal problems and start looking at the disease that is causing it? Well, there's a very simple answer to that. We can't agree what the cause is. So, I mean, just recently I made a video where I was talking about where I was talking about someone else talking about music videos. And I had lots of people in the comment section tell me that, oh, well, yes, I mean, you can see how moral standards have fallen, how the girls are dressing in a provocative manner and this and that and the other. It's because of the music videos. And I just thought, seriously? You're trying to tell us that it's the music videos that are causing this? Because I don't see it. And that's just it, that you will have people who attribute a certain cause. It doesn't mean that everybody else is going to agree with that cause. That's the problem, that we have got certain problems. If we would all agree on the cause, we would have long since solved all our problems. The problem is that all the various parties and all the various people looking at it through different perspectives are actually attributing different causes to the ills of our society. And it's because we can't agree on the causes that we can't then just simply stop fighting the symptoms and do something about the true causes about it, because we can't agree what these causes actually are. If we could, then really, truly, we wouldn't have a problem. But that is one of the basic problems. That's why we have got a left and a right and things like that, because through those various lenses, people regard different things as the causes of the ills of our, that befall our society. So in a way, if you want to have everyone agree with each other, you would effectively have to create a monoculture, which of course would be the dream of the social justice people, in which everybody is raised in exactly the same way to regard everything through exactly the same perspective. And then everyone would agree on the causes of the problems in society, and then you could solve them. But then you would be living in a totalitarian society.
No, I get that. That was I did wind it up with Brett, right? No, actually, this was so deep. I'm going to give everybody a minute if they want it, because I'm going to say nothing on this. So it was. I did get to everybody though, right? I did get to everyone.
I believe that Holly needs to go, but I would just like to just rebut to the first point of Britisher. I wasn't saying that you get rid of all of the labels. What I was trying to insinuate is that you put the labels to the background and you put the ideas to the foreground.
Okay. And I mean, I think that's I'm not going to say it's moot. That was a good point, but I'm not sure that Britisher would disagree with that. It's just Britisher was obviously making a not discounting what you said here, but let me just move on. Britisher was making a more overarching point that they had. Well, it didn't just rest on that. So I don't think you don't want to fight that, do you, Brett?
No, I'm quite happy to just leave it there. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, so I'll tell you what, folks. I would really like to get to one more of these, but I also know that I imposed upon Holly, gave her this long list of things. She may have been under the impression that I was going to like try to cover every one of these huge schools of thought tonight. So I'd like to give you a chance to pick one out if you'd like to talk about anything else since I picked this first one, Holly.
Yeah, I've been meaning to chime in about this first of all, though.
Certainly, yeah. Sorry, I'm gonna put your time right now.
No, it's cool. So both, I think a couple people here brought up the issue of abortion, and here in the U.S., like that's like a huge, hot button topic, and we're told like it's supposed to be like us dividing. If you're left or you're right, like you obviously have an opinion on abortion or something. And I was talking to a friend the other day, and basically we have here in Maine, basically all of our people in government, all of our politicians are basically the same. They all pretty much vote the same. Like the only thing that's defining any of them or divides anything is just that, stupid abortion issue, I'm going to say, and people can judge me for saying that, but it's just, I mean, in my opinion, I know people are going to be mad about this, but I just feel like it's a non-issue. It's used to just divide people on something that's kind of like arbitrary. I don't know. Maybe I can only say that because I'm a woman, but I just feel like it's just, we use that as some sort of hot button issue all the time, and it just drives me nuts because there should be a lot more to our discussion than that. But and when I take a political compass test, I'm not sure if it was the European version, but one of them I took. I'm a classical liberal, so people can take that for what they will, because some people in the chat were asking about my politics or beliefs. So
well, you're a Green Party member.
In on that. Yeah,
you're a Green Party member.
Yeah, and obviously I don't agree with everything on the Green Party. We have very limited political parties here in the United States, so there are people I get along with in the Green Party and people that I do not get along with in the Green Party, and I know a lot of people. We have, the Green Party is pro-choice. So that should open up the spectrum to allow anti-abortion people into the mix, because I think personally it should be a choice, and anyone can choose. Some people can choose to not like abortion, and there were people in the Green Party that said, "Oh, we need to kick these people out because they don't like abortion," and the point is choice. So I just get annoyed when people bring up that issue like it's some sort of defining term in American politics, and I just think that I just think we're splitting hairs when we talk about that. But
wow, do you have a timer, or were you just doing me like the boys and just ended right at, because if I just let it go, it's it was that close.
Nice.
So there is a follow-up for you, though, I do believe, Holly. And it's not a follow-up, but Welshmere Stories are very somebody that we like a lot. We don't usually agree with anything he says, but we like him. He said this, and I believe it's aimed at you. Green and liberal is an oxymoron. And do you think that's true?
I think in European Greens, perhaps, we have people have the term, like they throw around the term like the watermelon. So, you're green on the outside and communist on the inside. And I think it's a little bit different here in the United States. At least the people that I know, we were founded in Maine in 1984. It was basically a bunch of old hippies. And I don't think there were I don't think the basis was communism. So you know, and I'm a registered Green, and I serve in local office as a Green. But if there were other parties in the United States, I'd consider that as well. I mean, I'd consider being an independent too. It's really hard if you don't have any sort of mechanism to serve in office, like people helping you out. You basically have to be independently wealthy if you want to be an independent.
Isn't that true? Is that what independent means? No, that's not a question. That was a wonderful explanation. So y'all heard her. Any other questions? I just would direct you to the links I provided, and I will provide again to Holly Seeliger, the Zoo on Politicon, the political animal. Check out her videos on YouTube. They're second to none. I believe that might should vid me, and I'm not going to go through the diatribe on that. I'm just going to say you can find her easily. The links I gave, and I'll give you another one that will take you to her Twitter. Follow her on Twitter. Sub to her on her various platforms. Listen to her opinions. Disagree with them, agree with them, but make sure that you file this into the category of must listen to. Must get it into my file of voices that will help me formulate a reasonable opinion, because as you may not agree with everything that the Britisher says, or that the common sense guy says, or that Holly Seeliger says, or that I say, well, if you get these voices coming at you, you may be able to blend them with what you hear from other people and to formulate a wonderful personal idea that is your very own, that you can hold, you can pet, you can feed it, you can water it. It'll grow up to be a wonderful thing. So
Can
folks,
I jump in real quick? Sorry.
Sure,
Okay.
of course
Just
you can.
I'm seeing someone being asking about my someone says, so green in the US is not about environmental protection. And I think, you know, we need to talk about if you want to talk about environmental protection, I mean, technically in a lot of ways I'm a conservative when it comes to environmental protection, because I want to conserve natural resources, like not contaminate our water and our natural resources. So I would define my thoughts on that as conservative, because I don't think you know, we had a national park just put in place in the US, and I don't like the idea of like federalizing public lands. I think that's a really bad idea, because it could be you know, sold. It's basically owned by the federal government at that point. I think it should have been, if anything, if someone wants to donate their land, they can donate it to the state, you know, if they really want to give away their land. And also I don't like the idea of carbon credits. I think that's fake. I think it's a way to control and tax poor people, and part of like a larger technocratic problem that's not going to solve issues of pollution, or it's just, I think that's a complete farce. So I don't know if European Greens are all about carbon tax, and but I do not like carbon tax. So just to jump in quickly about that, that's all I wanted to say about that.
No worries, no worries. As the guest, we're always going to give you deference, man. It was beautiful. Actually, it was a wonderful apologia for what you believe in. And no, I would say that it's not an oxymoron. I mean, it's left and right. You can be right. I'm a righty. I believe in conservation of our resources, as you said. So, and all that could be debated too. So let's just say this, the label that, because we're talking about labels, and as I believe even Holly would say, as unimportant as it is, because it's the one that she can identify with most. It's not like she is going to die on every hill they die on, is Green Party. And so we appreciate that. We really like to have your voice here. So folks, you know what? I did go down the line for a certain reason, and you can probably see that the next one was symbolic interaction theory. And, you know, you kind of get the gist of why I may have done that, but I still want to switch it to Holly. And it doesn't matter if you want to go to any of these things that are in this list. And you know what, Holly, as we're getting nigh on an hour and a half, we never go over 3 hours. We don't know how long we can impose on you. So I will even say this, if this is something that after the next one or this one or any time, if you got something that's burning on your heart, you could always steer us in the other direction. We always do that with our guests. It's not that we're being sexist now and giving you a special treatment because you're a female. We do that with everybody that comes by.
I would not want that. Yeah, maybe if we jump in at functionalist theory at some point. I just have a couple of ideas on that.
Let's do that right now. I will go ahead and read this. Functionalist, social learning theory. Very important that we understand that functionalist, a lot of these words and a lot of these, the nomenclature is sometimes like when you go to a doctor and they say, oh, you have dermatitis, you got a red spot and you're like wondering what it's like. Oh, you got dermatitis. And you go home and you think that the doctor told you what you have. But dermatitis just means an inflammation of the derma. It just means your skin has a red mark on it. And so I want to shy away from doing that. So whereas I give you these names, the definition is the most important thing, the definition. So what Ms. Seeliger wants to know about, wants to talk about, wants to learn about, wants us to discuss amongst ourselves is the functionalist and social learning theory. Social learning theory is a theory that attempts to explain socialization and its effect on development of the self, of the psyche. When it says self, it means your inner person, your mind, not your brain, your mind. It looks at the individual learning process, the formation of self, the influence of society in socializing individuals. Social learning theory is commonly used by sociologists to explain deviance and crime. So yes, carried away. And I'll tell you what I'll do, Holly, I would like you to take my time. So I would like you to open this up with 3 minutes. We'll pop it off to the boys. I'll give their name after you and surprise them. And then we'll end with you on this one. How does that sound? Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know a whole lot about social learning theory, but I do know about, I'm slightly familiar with deviance and crime. So I think it goes into deviance, obviously the desire to break from social norms, and crime, it can be connected to people wanting to break from their social or communal class and commit crimes, and the crimes are defined by class as well. So if someone, let's say, is poor and is hungry, and they steal to feed their family, that individual might not be defining that as a crime because they're attempting to feed their family, whereas the social community will define that as a crime.
And very quickly, Holly.
Yeah.
Olga, you're muted. We can't hear you.
Oh, goodness. I don't even know how she knew how to stop. She must have read sign language. That was so perfect. She said, oh, yeah, okay. But so I was saying, Holly, if I may, I want to interject a little academia into this.
Please.
And just say, it's perfect what you're saying. But remember, this is also an apology or an excuse or a reason. So if I was to apply social learning theory, I could say this. I could use it to say this. Why? This young black person raped, murdered, and robbed an 83-year-old woman in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, in the inner city. But, he grew up knowing that his great-grandfather was a slave. He was very poor. This was an old pensioner that had been in this neighborhood for her entire life, and she's now over 80 years old. And so she was once among the wealthy white people that are here. And because of racism against blacks, now I don't want to go too much further, but you see what I mean? This is something that and again, I brung up all of these points because yes, there's something to all of them, but they can also be used. Let's remember, they had the best of intentions when they had baby Albert, giving him little fuzzy and clang, 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 and learning association. If we look at psychology and sociology, there were some people did things that we would classify now as not only unethical, but evil to find out certain things. So, and that was the academia I wanted to breast in. I can't believe I didn't hear a bell ringing by this time. I just want to point out that this can be used as something good to explain, as you were saying, but it can also be used to give a lot of excuses to say that because I am from here. And now I'm showing my bias. So if you want to continue, I'll start your time. I hope I didn't knock you off your game, and we'll bounce it all around.
I think, well, I guess social learning theory is based on, modeling, imitation. And I think you're right, when you bring up baby Albert, like this was used, basically they were experimenting on children, and, the Bobo doll experiment. So there was a famous experiment where kids were watching television, just like a woman punching a clown doll, and then they brought in a model clown doll into a group and gave it to a bunch of children, and the children just like beat the crap out of the clown. So
Albert Bandera. Yeah, that's Albert Bandera. That's modeling. Yep.
So I don't know if the other guys would like to jump in, that would be great.
Yep, and I'll try not to pop in
about this
anybody
clown. If you brought the clown in immediately after they're having seen the program, they might punch the clown.
Oh.
Does one know whether they made any experiments whereby they were the clown the next day?
It was very controlled. They for one thing, it was always a lady that they were watching. The lady would come in, she would have a tea with, all the toys were in the room. Okay, I'm going to make this as quick and as concise as I can. All the toys are in the room. There's a hammer, there's the Bobo doll, there's little stuffed animals, there's happy bears, there's boxing gloves, there's hockey sticks and bats and stuff like that. In one example, a group of kids, children would come in, they would watch this lady, always a lady, it looked like a school teacher, a grade school teacher, would come in, and sometimes, and they made up a word, it was called socko, because they couldn't cuss. But sometimes she would come in, she'd use the hammer to beat Bobo doll up with, and use the bat to beat Bobo doll up with, and throw the dolls around. Other times, she would, and the children watched. Then they were cut loose, and they observed what they did. They modeled. Albert Bandera did not believe we make any choices. Remember that. No choices, Britisher. You've never made a choice. You only model. You want light in the room, so you turn the light switch on. You didn't do that because you knew the light switch would turn. Oh,
I just made a choice.
Okay. Well, I'm trying to give you an explanation.
What I mean?
Yeah.
Do you understand what I mean? So
no, but I'm modeling. I've seen other people react, and I know about timers, and so no, and that could go deep. We could discuss that all day, and I won't. But so if I was getting too far, did the bell mean that I need to wrap it up?
No, no. The bell was my making a point.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, and there's so many points to be made about that. And Bandera, Dr. Bandera, who came up with modeling and is in all the books. I would not say that you or I, either one, are. I would just say there's all kinds of ideas on it. And yes, I believe I make my own choices. That threw me off because, as the Britisher knew, we all want to believe that we make our own choices. But from a psychological standpoint, I have to say there's a very good argument for no one makes choices. But devil's advocate. So boom, common sense guy, who's next? Do we want to continue on this? That was great, Holly. This is a really academic thing, but it's important because let's remember the Britisher, this all comes in a good hand in hand with the video that you just did. Because no, there's not some great cabal probably that's out there, but there are many things that influence us. And yes, I could hear you wanting to pipe in.
Can I sort of, because what this seems to suggest is, where we've gone to so far, is we seem to have sort of we seem to be driving at people perhaps, breaking the law, who are from poorer backgrounds and things like that. Whereas I think the mistake one makes in that regard is to look toward law and not to judge it by terms of morality. Because in that regard, law is a bit of an abstract, particularly because laws can differ in places. Whereas in this case, it's more a matter of how people have been socialized and how it affects their morality. And I think that is where sometimes there is some confusion with people who then start making excuses for others who have broken the law because they are poor or this, that, and whatever. Because I think there more than likely is a difference between those people who come from a poorer background and who are who face moral challenges that maybe people who are middle class, or more than that, people who are rich, never face. So one of the things I would compare it to is Tiger Woods. When it turned out that he had had lots of affairs with women, there were a great many people who immediately jump, on the bandwagon of condemnation of Tiger Woods. And then you looked at some of those ladies who had, let's just say, approached Mr. Woods, and you just went, well, they are quite close to a double figure.
What would Jesus do?
And precisely, what would Jesus do? And the thing that always struck me about those people who were so virulently condemning him was that they had never actually faced that temptation. And that sustained level of temptation and that strength of temptation. When you have literally ladies who could grace, the Playboy centerfold, on offer, and that is 24/7. That is a much stronger temptation than any normal male would ever face. And that's where I sort of look at it. If you are coming from a poorer background, you are in a way subject to much greater temptation on a moral basis than someone who is born with a silver spoon in his mouth. Because that person already possesses a lot of the things that the other person might be tempted to steal. Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah, and they're nothing to that person.
It doesn't necessarily mean that those people are morally superior, because they have simply never come across the temptation and had to withstand it. And therefore, those people who come from poorer backgrounds have to withstand a lot greater temptation than those people who possess certain things. Let's put it like that.
Great. That's great. And I forgot the timer, so I'm going to say common sense guy. You must have something. You haven't said much in a little bit. I'm actually going to start you at 3 minutes.
Yep, that's fine. I mean, this whole social learning theory is basically the idea of nature versus nurture, isn't it, really? I see where I'm going with this then.
Good point. I haven't thought about it. Carry on.
So you've got the point of social learning theory where you have to put children into, say, I don't know, a nursery, for instance, to make them socialize, to make them learn from other kids what's socially acceptable, that you can't nick something off of somebody because that kid will hit you. And that's how we learn, generally. If you go and do something, you take something off of somebody, then they're generally going to hit you back in that sort of sentence. But if you're on your own and you keep crying to mummy all the time, you're going to get what you want. Because that's just generally what happens, because you will break most mums' resolves down. So that generally happens. So you get to that point, and then you get to the point of socially going through school. Now, that also goes through the point of actually meeting other people, socially interacting with people. Then you get to the point where you have the social outsider, for instance, the one that gets pushed to the outside. Now, this also comes into the actual theory where it says before about by diversion, where because you're pushing that person out of the social norms, out of the social standings, you're then forcing that person to then look at the social standings from the outside perspective. And then that person will then have the choice will have the choice to decide that they're going to destroy the diversion of that system by actually trying to destroy the social norms, by rebelling against it. And that's the reason why you get people that are classified as the bad boys, so to speak, or the bad girls, or whatever you want to call them. Now that also then plays on further on into their livelihoods, because that's the way that they've then learned how to fit into social norms, to not fit into it. So the further that they have to actually push themselves not to be in a social norm is how they produce themselves to go down a criminal path, for instance. At least that's what it would be in my head at this point in time. You could then also go to a point of saying, with social learning theory, as what British has said, that if you get people that are poor, yes, they have more chance of trying to nick something off of you, for instance, or something like that. But I would say that the rich person is actually more dangerous than the poor, because the rich person always gets what the rich person wants. And if you stop the rich person from getting it, they will do anything to get it. And I think that's the difference between somebody who's poor, who's trying to make their way in life, to somebody who's rich.
So what you're
I
saying
think
is the rich person has not been conditioned to be disappointed once in a while.
Exactly.
And that was perfect. Good follow-up too there. I'm not going to lag on to this. All I'm going to say is we're going to let Holly take my 3 minutes, as I said. Social learning, nature, nurture. There's been things that come up, Holly, that I did not think of on this topic. Got anything else to add?
I think just to mention about the Bobo doll experiment, when they first brought that clown into the classroom with kids, you know, they were playing with it, but they weren't punching it. They weren't punching it until they were shown the video of the woman punching it. So I think I think this was done in, it was either the 40s or the 50s, but they were trying to show, you know, I don't know if it was connections specifically to violence or just socialization.
No. Albert Bandera only was trying to show modeling. His hypothesis was that no one makes decisions, and he did show that, like you said, and let's remember, it wasn't when it was brung into the room. The children were brung into the room that they witnessed the lady playing in, and half the time to half the group, there was a control group that was shown nothing. And as you said, that control group, they did not beat up Bobo. They played with Bobo just like they did everything else. Oh, Bobo. But when the group that saw the lady beat up Sacco and hit it with the bat, they went in there and overwhelmingly forgot about the tea party and everything else and beat up. So yes, Holly, and again, I pause this because I don't want to beat you up. I just think that, so what's the point, Holly? Tell us in your deep, dark heart, what did you learn from this? What was it that made you want to talk about this? Isn't there a lesson we can all learn?
I think I'm just reminded of this kind of a bizarre story, but if you know about Ted Kaczynski, who was the Unabomber here in the United States, he, you know, I'm not condoning or dismissing anything that he ever did. You know, he had these bizarre rants about trying to blow up the US government or whatever. I don't remember. I was just a kid when this happened, but I had learned that he had gone to Harvard. I think he was about 16 years old, and he was involved in a similar social experiment where I think the department was trying to model Nazi behavior, where they basically had students start to torture other students to see how far it would go. And Ted was a victim of this. You know, he was part of this experiment, and you can look it up. The audience can look it up on their own time. But basically, I think he claims that he was basically radicalized after that happened. And, you know, I mean, it would be kind of hard just to imagine, you know, going to Harvard and being a math genius and then just being tortured and by a department, and what it could possibly do to you. So just interesting thought on that topic.
Well,
oh goodness, you boys have to, yes, please.
Cut in.
No, not even briefly, Britt. I'm going to give each of you 2 minutes because that should have opened up a can of worms.
Regarding some of the things we've touched upon here, and particularly because you said, you also touched upon the fact of, whether we actually make decisions and whether we don't. I would try and put it quite succinctly in this kind of way. I believe that it is possible to, in a way, condition people through society as to what is good and what is bad, what is right and what is wrong. That I understand, that can be conditioned, and that will, to a certain extent, guide a great deal of our behavior. And therefore, we can then say that we are not taking those decisions. But at the same time, I would then nonetheless say that once you have established those parameters, so to speak, of what is right and what is wrong, it then falls to the individual to make the decision whether he wishes to do the right or the wrong thing. Do you follow the differentiation that I'm drawing there?
Oh yeah, you got
Like-
plenty of time too. But anybody jump in there,
Well,
Holly.
that was pretty much
I'm
all I had
certainly
on
not dismissing, you know, Ted and the way that he went about his life. I mean, ultimately, people have free will, and people go through horrendous things in their life, and it's always a choice about your decision. You know, and just, you know, do the same with, you know, just because you're poor doesn't mean you're going to steal, or you should, or you can rationalize it.
No, perfectly agree
Common
with
sense
you.
guy. Common sense guy. Nothing on this.
Yeah. No, I've got a quick point. There's two ways that a social experiment like that could go. They could go exactly the way that you've suggested, where they would actually embrace it all, or it could go to the point where they have something dissimilar to PTSD, where as soon as they start thinking about something like that, that they absolutely cower and they don't want to have any part of it because they remember everything that was bad about it. But that comes down again to social grooming, so to speak. But I found it very interesting that you said that they actually did the experiment to make people feel that they were Nazis. Not because I don't think that you were saying that they definitely were. I believe that you on that point. I just find it interesting that when was this supposed to have been done, in the late 90s or early 80s?
The experiment was done, I think it was what was it, 1962, 61 or 2. Oh,
I almost thought
59.
I almost thought you were confusing Milgram with Bandera, because Milgram, they really did pile on him and say it was, you know, he was trying to excuse Nazis with the Milgram experiment, with the, you know, keep shocking and the, oh yes, it's the, anyway. I don't want to go off into.
Oh yeah, that's another one. Yep.
But Bandera, I'm not sure. And again, it could be tied into. So I would love it, Holly, if you've seen anything where they took Bandera's work and tried to tie in the idea that we model, that is modeling, to Nazism. In other words, we see our soul, you know, our commanding officer do it, therefore we do it, and it's okay, and we don't even think about it. It's an automatic response. Well, this is really cool. Sorry, folks. I mean, I've got to know about this stuff, man. This is stuff that I've studied for years and years ago, also in a lot of these cases, because you don't keep going over it. But when you think about it, all this old stuff, I'll tell y'all in my final point what I think. Yeah, folks. Anybody else on this?
Oh, just to jump in real quick. I mean, I think you're right about, you know, whatever, calling it the Nazi experiment, or someone else called it the prison experiment. I think that's
Zimbardo. The Stanford prison. That's Zimbardo.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, you can call it whatever you want. It's experiments in torture, you know, and
I'll quit playing the psychology nerd, because every time I hear a different one, and there's a lot of things could be tied in. But when we talk about Stanford prison experiment, that's Zimbardo. You know, he got them together and random drew them out. And someone played guard, someone played, and it just showed that when you put people in power, give them full reign, they make them do weird sex stuff in about 4 days. Don't matter who they are. Britisher, he thinks he wouldn't do it. But if they put us there and he was a guard and I was a guard and we had other people, in 4 days we'd be making them simulate sex and mocking them and throwing poop on them. And I don't know why. He don't know why. It's just what happens. In Zimbardo, I mean,
it would take me 4 days.
Well, I don't know. I just said it because, yeah, it would be somewhere in there, because British, they shut it down in 7 and they went down, and it was another psychologist, because Zimbardo could see all this going on. And I can't remember her name, but it was a lady. She came down and was like, you got to shut this down. It was like, why? I'm the warden. And he realized, I mean, it was afterwards that he realized, oh, I had fallen into the part of warden. And yeah, look into it. The kids that were prisoners, they were scarred for life. The one kid that they made say, prisoners 7682 had been done a bad thing. They made all of the other prisoners, if they wanted to eat and be treated nice, they had to say this to him constantly. I think it was 8 hours. Prisoner 768 has done a bad thing. Prisoner 768 is done over and over. I don't even want to do it more than twice, because British will ring the bell. And imagine, oh Lord, that was just insanity. Wow, you really got me, though, Holly. You looked into this stuff, didn't you?
In a way, we saw that acted out in real life then eventually, didn't we? In Abu
Ghraib. Abu Ghraib, and that they did that on.
Oh, perfect. Yep.
They did that on purpose, Britisher. They knew what would happen. They had CIA spooks up on that floor when they pulled out. That lady, I can't remember her name, that was doing this stuff. She was just above a private. She shouldn't even have. Oh, Lord have mercy. That was, this is what people fail to realize, Britisher. When we want to be really Britisher about things and say, oh, no, this nothing, everything is not rosy, but no, people wouldn't do evil things. We have to remember that there are folks that study psychology and human nature, and they apply it in ways that us assembled here could never imagine until we read about it, like Abu Ghraib. And in that instance, they knew what they were doing. They pulled it out. They left the very low trained, nobody trained on this type of thing, left them in charge over a huge amount of people. And just like in the Stanford prison study, within a week, they had them piled up. And oh, Lord, I can't even think about it. It makes me sick. Because, and the reason it makes me sick, people, I want to make it clear, is because whether I like it or not, even sitting here in my nice warm house, not even wanting to believe this is true, I know it's true. I know that I would do that. I would like to think that Lord of the Flies is just a fun novel, but it's the real thing. Oh, that was fun. It sucked. It's like nobody wants to talk. It's like, holy shit, Ogre just took a dump on our entire conversation, man. Made it smell so bad, nobody wants to touch it. Sorry. And then, look, folks, I got not much else because I don't think that we have time to crack into another one of these. And I do want to make sure that we all, Holly, I'm not sure that you've been here since we've gotten a little more regimented than we've been at the end of each one of our broadcasts. And God forgive me for not telling you this before, but you seem pretty eloquent and unable to shake. So at the end, we have a last word, a final word. And, you know, what we'll do is we'll have the common sense guy go, and then we'll have the Britisher go, and then you're, oh, how do we do it? No, I'm not even gonna. What am I doing? I'm sexist in a minute, guys. It's actually you first, Holly. Sorry, and then common sense guy, and then Britisher, and then myself. It really is too. I just realized I was trying to give you like the easy way and let somebody else go first. But on the final word, we go seniority, and that's the way it goes. And then on Fridays, of course, Britisher's last. So I don't know, folks. Did I talk too long on that too? Do we have anything else to add? Are we ready to wrap up? What are we going to do? We've been rolling at this pretty hard for about 2 hours. It feels good.
I'm okay to carry on.
I mean, I don't know. I think whatever, you know, the subject we've basically been dealing with now, I think we've pretty much wrung the last drop out of it. So if we were to go on, we would have to go on with something else. But
yes.
Well, if Holly's fine with it, then Britt, I would let the common sense guy or yourself pick out one more, and we can go this. Everybody gets 3 minutes on the next pick, and I will again play host as I did, and we'll give our final words. Because at that point, that will take us another 35, 40 minutes. So, you know, that's what we can do. What do y'all think?
Good. Yeah,
all right,
good.
So who's picking? Common sense, pick one, baby. You pick it.
I don't even have anything up in front of me, my friend. So
you dog, you just got me to oh, Britisher, what are we gonna do with this young kid? I can't even believe it.
But it just shows that I didn't have any.
I'll just pick one at random then.
You pick one, yeah.
So I mean, given that we've been talking about labeling, there is one apparently known as labeling theory. Not that I'm familiar with this. Just to all ladies and gentlemen out there, I am pretty much unfamiliar with all these theories. So just so you know.
No worries.
Labeling theory. Labeling theory is one of the most important approaches to understanding deviant and criminal behavior. Haven't we just been there?
They all say the same damn thing.
It begins with the assumption that no act is intrinsically criminal. Definitions of criminality are established by those in power through the formulation of laws and the interpretation of those laws by the police, courts, and correctional institutions.
Oh my goodness! And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take 1 minute. Yeah, I'm going to take 1 minute here and say that when you come to labeling theory, it's one of the most dangerous because, as you just heard, they're saying even, oh man, I'm not going to go back through. They're saying that what it is, if you do something wrong, it may be because people said you were going to do it. And then when you start looking at groups of people that do a lot of this one thing wrong, like rich executives, bank fraud, tax evasion, you know what I mean? You can't just start excusing them because they're prone to it. And that's why I threw in rich, you know, executives, So there you go. When we go into labeling theory, folks, and I'm got 18 seconds, and I'm going to kick it off to whoever wants to go. No, I'll pick because I feel like, man, I hate to put the brunt on everybody. So when you get to labeling theory, you get to something that's one of the most dangerous, because it's not saying we have to label people. It's saying that because of labeling people, it, and I'm phrasing this in my way, excuses a multitude of sins. So I don't know. I'm gonna let the now Britisher, you go first this time.
Okay. So I mean, I think the best way for me to go is by kind of trying to ask questions, because I mean, you're the person that studied this, so you are kind of familiar with these things. So when they're saying that there is no such thing as criminal behavior or deviant behavior, are we actually merely talking about criminality, or are we talking about morality? So is this effectively a theory that rejects all morality and just makes it to be a social construct?
Britisher, when we talk about
trying to say that the ruling classes, the privileged, so to speak, set the rules, and therefore the rules shouldn't necessarily apply to the people at the bottom of the pile, because they are rules set by white men simply to keep everyone else down. I mean, how exactly are we to understand it?
Don't get too big on me. So let me just say that the people that you just mentioned at the end would be the psychologists and sociologists. Okay, they're the ones that set the rules in this aspect. All right, and then oh Lord, see, that was such a big question. So the first part,
okay,
yeah, the very first part of that was. I'm telling you, I just lost it because I wanted to remember to tell you that the people
what I'm trying to work out is is it when they're talking of there is no such thing as criminality, really?
Okay, no. Yes.
Are they talking of just breaking the law, or is it just a matter of morality itself underlies criminal law?
Bam, it's so hard. Yeah, so no. There's no morality with these people. And I did answer it all there. There's no morality because they set what morality is, and they are the gods.
So essentially, it's entirely relativist. So basically, once again, everything is equal. Everything is the same. There is no such no such thing as right and wrong, because technically, there is no behavior worth condemning, because the only condemnation that exists is the condemnation that comes from up on high, from those who have privilege, and it is merely being exercised in order to keep those others who don't have privilege down. So is that really...
That's perfect.
Is that the crux of it, really?
That is the crux of it. That's perfect. So without expounding on it and getting lost in it, I'm telling you, there's a lot of stuff to not only think about answering your questions, but when you said it, there's gods that sit on high. They call themselves psychologists and sociologists. They give their credentials like they are flashing the pass to St. Peter. And they are the ones that say this is good or bad. There is no morality. Let's remember, there's no morality, and it is all relative. If those people at the top change, why then the morality changes? Which means in Germany in 1938, one thing went. Do you dig it? I mean, so we all say.
Essentially, it's a sort of a cynical theory that is effectively claiming that society as such, the way it is run, is corrupt.
Yes.
Because it is run by a corrupt clique that has privilege that is at the top.
That's called to you something so much that you must be that thing. Yes. So let's just kick this off without the British and I just completely nerding out, which we will for an hour. Here we go, folks. Is there a point? Do we see this happening today? Do we see someone either applying it for benevolent reasons or applying it for evil reasons in our society today? This labeling. So yeah, we'll start with you then, Common Sense. Go to Holly, and then we'll wrap it up with Britt.
Okay, well, quite easily. I mean, I'm going to go forward from what we were talking about before, which was the form of cultural Marxism, where if you keep on calling somebody, I don't know, let's go with a low poor person who's just a factory worker, whose mum and dad have been a factory worker for years on years and years. They're going to be a factory worker. Their children are going to be factory workers, blah, 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 blah. If you keep on telling that person that, then they're going to be. So in this theory of labeling, as what this is, if you were to keep on calling somebody from the left and they were calling somebody from the right a Nazi, one would only presume then by this theory that if you keep on calling them a Nazi, they would turn into a Nazi. Not because they want to turn into a Nazi, but because of the nature of deviance itself. As in, because you keep on telling them that's what they are, that's what they will become. But I don't like this theory because it actually devolves the point of free will, and I'm a big believer in the process of free will. But that's what this theory entails to me. The fact that if you keep on telling somebody something, that's what they're going to be. If you keep on telling somebody they're a victim, they're going to be a victim, and that means that they're going to want handouts. If you keep on telling somebody that they've got the best chance in the world of being able to become a doctor, they'll probably become a doctor. And it's as simple as that. And it's a theory that just basically goes through the whole easiness of understanding the theory of Marxism. Now, let me explain on that just quickly. To the point of saying that if you are low class, then you will be low class. If you class somebody as higher class, doesn't matter if they are or they're not, in that instance, they will be classed as higher class because you were going to attack them. It was okay to attack them because I perceived them as a higher class to myself. And to bring it into today's world, Antifa, it's okay to hit a Nazi because I perceive them to be a Nazi. And that's why I don't like this theory.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, no, it's not okay to punch a Nazi. We'll stay on this. Why is labeling theory wrong, Miss Seeliger? Is this a good thing, bad thing? Can you see it happening in our society today? Is I think the main question.
So I'm cheating a little bit, and I'm looking up labeling theory on Wikipedia.
You cannot cheat because there's no rules.
Sorry. Oh, okay. All right.
You
No
can't
rules.
cheat because there's no rules.
Okay. All right. All right. So it's a theory of how self-identity and behavior of individuals may be determined or influenced by the terms used to describe or classify them, associated with self-fulfilling prophecy and stereotyping. So labeling theory holds that deviance is not inherited to an act, but instead focuses on the tendency of majorities to label minorities or those seen as deviant from standard cultural norms. And it was prominent in the 60s and 70s. So that's why it's kind of like, post social identity sort of stuff, and why it seems to kind of get into the weeds, as the other commenters have mentioned. But it's focused, labeling theory has its origins in Suicide, which is a book by Emil Durkheim. And I liked Emil Durkheim, and he did a book on it was called Suicide in the late 1890s, and he was talking about there was like a spike in suicide in middle and upper classes, and he was connecting that to the industrial age. So it's kind of an interesting topic, perhaps for another one of our chats. That would be nice.
Great point. Great point.
Yeah, the labeling theory. Yeah, it's basically saying, if you're a person of color and you're, in the hood or the ghetto, you're going to be, as a kid, you're going to be labeled as a thug, so therefore you're more likely to engage in that sort of behaviors because people are saying that that's who you are. And, I feel like, I'm not a huge fan of all this, third wave feminism, as a lot of my viewers know. I'm critical of feminism, but I can also see to a degree with labeling theory, perhaps as a child, I know I was told or labeled that I was not good at math or science after a certain age because I was a female and I should focus on art and pretty things,
Were you good at math?
I was. I mean, I still am.
Because I was told the same thing. I play the guitar and drum because I was told the same thing. I was told, like, hey, focus on like philosophy and music because I was really good at those things. And I did.
Perhaps because it's not because I was female. I don't know.
I mean, no, and I only cut in there because this is the big debate now. And boys, I don't want to make it 3-on-1, but do you? I don't want no bullshit from you either, Holly. Do you feel in your life, honest to God, in Maine, where you're from, do you feel has your life been more difficult? And I think the answer. I know the answer, and I can point to one reason why. But just tell us about it.
I'm torn on that. I think women judge me just as much, if not more. I don't think it needs to be, men versus women. I think women are terrible to other women. I wonder about labeling theory. I'm 5 feet tall too, so I would like to think maybe I believe perhaps if I were taller, I would have more. People would respect me more or something like that. I mean, the labels can go on and on. So I think it's a slippery slope, but the labeling,
Well, because look, you've said it on air, so I'm not breaking anything on you. You were once, they wanted to just take you off the school board because you have your art, because your art. I'm going to be delicate as I can because of your art, because of something you do with your art and your job. And do you think that if a man had the same job, exact same job, not in any more of a, because look, if you could explain it, and so I don't have to stutter, because there's a difference. Some people would call you, they labeled you something that you weren't with your art. But so if a male was in that same category you're in, not some dude stripping in front of like 500 crazy women at a strip fest for girls, but was actually doing something, artful. And do you dig what I'm saying? Do you feel like you got more hatred for that because you're a female?
Perhaps just to define this a little bit for the audience.
Please, because I don't want to talk about it. I want to let you talk about it. That's what
I created and did burlesque shows in college, and I haven't done burlesque in a little while. I've been focusing on my YouTube stuff. But yeah, I produced burlesque shows, variety shows in New England for about 6 or 7 years. And and I, at that same time, I ran and got elected into a local board of education. So yeah, when the mainstream newspapers were like, how can we allow this stripper onto a board of education, and I think I was actually allowed to play the woman card with that. I'm torn. I think perhaps if a man had been a stripper, done burlesque or something, I think perhaps they might have been more strict with him. Honestly, I know there was a man before me who his slogan was "gay, green, and gorgeous," and basically he was skewered by the mainstream media, and he lost his re-election on the board of education. So I think I was actually able to use, third wave feminism a little bit to my advantage, and just say, I was able to brush off that sort of labeling that was used against me. And people were like, she's a strong, independent woman or whatever. I think people actually did vote for me, at least initially, my first election, because of that sort of labeling that was going on.
So you didn't feel so what I got from that, and I'm going to cut the boys loose on you in case you got any questions about this. So you feel like now your ideals, I hate to use the word feel, your idea now is that it's kind of could go both ways. There's some ways that men get discriminated against, and we're no MREs here, whatever they call them. MREs, meals ready to eat, men's rights, whatever it is. We're no honey badgers here. Do you think that maybe it's the same and different, or not?
I think the labeling, I think we've reached, peak feminism or whatever at this point. I mean, I'm open. I poke fun at it now at this point, because the labeling has just gone off the deep end, and it's not even making sense anymore at this point. I like men, so I'm going to stand up for people are people.
I like you too, Holly. And just in case the boys want to say, I'm sure they do. Come on, y'all got something on this. No questions. Burlesque. She was a burlesque. She was a real burlesque girl, boys. Before they kicked me off Facebook because I wouldn't show them my ID. I mean, I used to see her. She was my Facebook pal or whatever it calls. And man, she's the real deal. Not just like, it's not a titty show. It's like she was a fan dancer, and then they had like comedy and all the whole 9 yards. The real deal. Man, I would have loved to see something like that. Unbelievable. My hat's off to you. Anybody else? No questions on this? Look, I'm all gutter, glush,
no,
and British.
Quite honestly, no. I have nothing to contribute. I really don't have anything to say.
Well, we let Holly have a little piece there. Yeah, rock and roll.
You were saying that the gentleman before you, the green, gay, and gorgeous. I'm paraphrasing because I couldn't remember exactly what you said. But is that what you said that his campaign slogan was?
Yes. Yep. That was his slogan, and that for some reason that was not tolerable.
Well, can I ask a question? I obviously understand that it would be his to answer, not yours, but one would have to ask you, is your story, so to speak. Do you know if he was of that orientation when he was saying that?
Oh, yeah, he was openly gay. And this was, this was almost 10 years ago now, so I think perhaps the climate was a little different, but I mean, we're also just a Democratic Party stronghold here in Maine, in Portland. We have only one party, and that's the Democratic Party. So
no, that's fine. What was the reason why he got elected the first time? Because you said that this was his second term. So what was the campaign slogan, or what was his thinking of campaigning the first time and winning?
I don't think he was openly gay that first time he got elected. I am not sure.
Ooh, that's hard on the old down east Yankees. And I don't care what they say. They can be as Democrat as they want, but the real old down east Yankees, the ones I'm talking about. That's not a good sell. The openly gay thing.
Well, in that case, then, if it was an openly gay thing and it wouldn't work with them, surely the idea of a burlesque dancer would appeal to them then.
Oh well, she just now, Mrs. Seeliger, are you still on the school? You're still on the school board, right? I believe you are. I mean, I don't know. Are you still on it?
Yeah, I'm finishing up my second term, and yeah, I think I think I was able to shut down that sort of labeling, basically. And like I said, I think it was, I can thank third wave feminism a tiny bit, because people were like, oh, that's sexist, or people were able to see, and I was able to use that to my advantage, I suppose.
No, that's fair enough. Was your main attackers the mainstream media or people that are in lobbies?
Yes, yeah, it was the mainstream. There's a newspaper called the Portland Press Herald, and they're owned by David Sussman.
They really like you, don't they?
Yeah, he's a major donor to Hillary Clinton campaign, and you can look up David Sussman. He's a big deal.
They've not said anything good about you. Isn't that the guy? Is David Sussman? I have to look back because I follow him to see what he's saying. There was a dude that wrote like a hit piece about you.
He wrote a hit piece about like what was it, like 6 months ago, about
this Sussman guy, right?
Yeah, it was my YouTube channel. They were like, this person is able to use their First Amendment right, whatever, for YouTube, but should we allow someone like this to be serving in office when they do stuff like this? It was petty.
The funny thing too, Holly, is back then he was like, this lady with her platform of 1,200 people. Well, now I'm looking, Mrs. Seeliger, Miss, whatever it is. I always get that wrong again. Forgive me, if you will. It's 5,500 now. So keep that up, young lady, and just stuff it right in his face every chance you get. Good way to go. Way to go. Yeah, and I guess my mates are running out. We're all running out. We're getting close to 3 now,
Well,
girl.
no,
We're
I
really
have more
close on you.
questions.
Yeah, so let's do this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give, if it's okay with the Brit, I'm sure it is. I can feel it right now. I'm going to give the common sense guy at the helm right now for this last whatever he's got. I'm going to time it at 10 minutes, you all, between you two, and then we'll go into our last words because we're rolling on and we can't mess with the algorithm. If we go over 3 hours, they don't even know when this won't get out to nobody. So carry on, big guy. Go ahead, common sense.
Well, I was just going to say, then that means that the actual democratic process actually worked. It was actually the mainstream media that was attacking you. The thing that feminism was actually supposed to be on their side at that point in time.
Yeah, it's bizarre. You know, I mean, the person who wrote that article was like a man. I think it was in his 60s or something like that, and it seemed to backfire. And yeah, I was able to use the third wave feminists, I suppose, to my advantage.
But was it the actual process of using the third wave feminism, or was it the fact of you using your own intelligence and actually saying, well, there's nothing wrong with doing that and doing this?
Well, I would like to think it was me doing that, but now I question whether, you know, it really just was third wave feminism. I don't know. Maybe I'm putting myself down, but I'm considering other possibilities.
Well, the reason why I asked this question is because you put your... I don't want to belittle your experiences, so to speak, because obviously they're yours, they're not mine. It's just what I'm gauging from it. But from what I'm getting is that you're putting your faith into an ideology where it might actually be the point that it was you that actually changed the democratic point of people's points of view. It was the fact that you went out and talked to people and you didn't shy away from it and you actually fought it properly rather than relying on your female card, so to speak.
Yeah, and I don't have. I actually have very few friends who are feminists. So.
Well, that's why I'm saying I don't think it was a fact that you actually won it because of third wave feminism. I think you won it because you're a very intelligent person and you're able to stick out the fight and actually counter every point that they probably made, rather than it actually being a point of feminism. I think you should have faith in yourself more than an ideology that hasn't helped you, because the mainstream media was against you because of what you did, and that was all to do with third wave feminism.
Yeah, good point on that.
Yeah, I'm finished.
All right, well, daggone, as we go into our final words, all I can say is that was one of the most beautiful things I've ever heard, was have faith in yourself in lieu of a ideology that has never helped you. Man, that was beautiful common sense.
Aww.
It really was. And I mean, and you should take that to heart, Holly. I watch a lot of your stuff. When I would go on, I've learned, just because my channel and me, I am me, I've got a couple sock accounts. So there's a lot of times where I'm commenting, you've mentioned me from time to time, in my sock account, because I don't know. I don't want anybody, no drama, right, Britt? I don't want to bring drama to your channel because someone may not like me and what I say. And if I wasn't controversial, and maybe that'll wear off one day. If I wasn't so controversial, maybe I wouldn't do that. So I'll say this now. Look, I'll tell you what, boys, no rock, paper, scissors. We're not going to do any sexual discrimination here. We're going to go right in the order. And I wrote down notes, man. I jotted down some notes on my last word, so important to me. So what we're going to do now, Holly, thank you so much for your time. No one's going to butt into each other. We're all going to respect each other's time. You have as much time as you want to say anything you want. It could tie into what we spoke about today. It could have nothing to do with it. It doesn't matter what it is. You could tell us that we all suck, each one of us, in order and why and how. And none of us will say a word. We'll let you continue. And then we'll go from Holly, Miss Holly, to the common sense guy, to the British, and I will wrap us up. Thank you so much for coming, Miss Holly. You were a pleasure. A wonderful time working with you tonight.
Yeah, I hope you have me on again sometime. It's fun. I hope maybe we can do another video on roasting SJWs or something. You guys are fun. That would be a fun topic. Maybe we can have some news articles picked out or something next time and just go over some stuff. That would be fun. And just poke fun at what's going on in the world. And maybe we can even tie in some of our new social theories that we discussed today. That then we could really tie it together. So Thanks, Common Sense Guy and Britisher and Ogre. You guys, I'm interested in your fortitude. You guys are doing live shows all the time, so definitely appreciate how often you guys are working and how much you work together. It's been fun to see how things have changed on your channel over, what was it, the past year or so, Ogre? I don't know how long you've been doing this, but you've got interesting cast of people, and
10 months.
yeah, cool. Yeah, a lot. It's a lot of work. I mean, you're on here a lot, so hope it continues to grow. And it was really cool seeing Britisher was on Sargon's channel a few months ago, and that was really cool. I was like, I know that guy. And Common Sense Guy, I like seeing your work on here, and you've got your own channel as well. So just appreciate every time that Ogre invites me on. Thanks.
Cheers. Common sense.
Yep. I suppose we've talked about lots of different theories today, but I think the most important one is the one where I was just mentioning to Holly at the end. It's personal responsibility. You can have all of these ideologies, this Marxist theory, this sociology theory. You can have all of them. But if you don't have faith in yourself and you don't believe in yourself and you don't do what you're supposed to do and have your own free will, don't follow the crowd. Do what you think is right rather than what everybody else is telling you is right. If you follow yourself and be true to yourself, you can never do anything wrong in your own eyes. Some people will go, yeah, but you could always do something as in breaking the law if you feel that you need to kill somebody. Then yeah, you would do something wrong, but you wouldn't in the eyes of yourself. And that's what my point is. If you don't have faith in yourself, you don't have faith in anything. And if you fall to the traps of trying to go to religion, and I use feminism as that point as well, if you go into the points of religion and you fall for the traps of thinking that there is something that's going to help you. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to say do not take solace from that. But it is your own actions that are going to determine what you do and what you come out at. You cannot pray to God to get an A on your test if you don't study for it. You cannot pray to feminism and use a female card to try and get out of a parking ticket if you have a female police officer in front of you. Not going to work. My point is, as it is always, as is a common thing on my videos and on my channel, personal responsibility. And I think that's what's missing in the world nowadays. If we look after ourselves in the ideologies of actually looking after ourselves, but to the benefit of everybody else, to be the best that we can be, and that will elevate everybody else that is around us, because they'll see us doing well and see us that have come from council estates or come from little backwater villages and towns and doing well with themselves and thinking, I can do that too. And that's the way that you actually lead people. You don't lead people by telling people what to do. You lead them by showing, by leading them, by taking them by the hand and going, come with me. And that's all to do with personal responsibilities. And I think I'll leave that there.
Well said, mate. Well said.
Well, I think one of the things that sort of looking at these theories and whatever, one of the impressions that I get is there seems to be this constant effort to try and make out that there is more than one truth. That truth depends on how you see it, on your perspective. That there is a poor man's truth and a rich man's truth. There is a black man's truth and a white man's truth. In fact, there is only one truth. And it doesn't really matter which way you bend it. But the thing is, we now are increasingly living in a time when more and more, if not everyone, is making their own truth It is, in fact, definitely the various political sides which are making their own truth. I mean, we only need to look at some of the shenanigans. You know, you only need to mention a word such as Russia, and what will the right wingers say? And you can almost be certain that the word the Democrats will come up. And if at the same time you mention that same word to some left wingers, then Trump will invariably come up. And all of either side will be completely blind to perhaps any accusations that are coming their way. No, they don't exist. It doesn't exist in my reality. It doesn't exist in my truth. Truth is solely what I want it to be, what I make it, effectively. Truth has become relative. Everything by now is, I know I keep repeating myself when I go on about this. Everything is becoming so partisan that people are becoming blind. And I mean, I just recently, these last 1 or 2 days, I heard, I believe there is a senatorial candidate. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think his name is Roy Moore.
Yeah, Moore.
He has had accusations come his way that perhaps means, that mean he may have been, messing with a minor. Now, to me, I would say, I'm sorry, but until something is proven, I really don't want to hear about it in this context, because otherwise it just becomes open season on politicians with political smears. Because if you have something that's completely unsubstantiated and you can throw around like that, and that should then immediately disqualify a candidate, well, guess what? It's going to happen to every single candidate. But at the same time, we get responses on the other side that aren't replying like that. They're even saying, well, I don't even care if he's a paedophile, he's not a Democrat. And you think, hang on a moment, you would sooner have a paedophile than a Democrat? This is where we're ending up. That the divisions are becoming so deep that people would prefer a paedophile Republican over a Democrat. And this is not my saying that he is. As I say, my position is I don't think one should really be taking things like that into account when they're completely unsubstantiated and they've only come up 2 weeks before the election. To my mind, that rings alarm bells. I see some serious gamesmanship afoot here. But at the same time, if the answer to that is, well, I don't care as long as he's a Democrat, then I think people really need to start questioning their morality. And I think as we saw laid out here before us, this list of various theories, which all in a way try to square a circle. I mean, particularly that labeling theory at the end. I mean, it's academic nonsense. It's the only way I can describe it as. But on the other hand side, I think we are getting nonsense coming our way that might not be quite as neatly labeled, and not hasn't had no end of academic papers written about it, which we're just basically getting from the right hand side. And there we are seeing dogma of equal proportion coming our way. Just while we were on air, I saw 1 or 2 tweets that just took me aback, which came from right of field.
Give us one.
Even though those people wouldn't wish to, wouldn't wish to be identified as being of the right. For some reason, that is something people don't want to be identified as. They all want to be seen as centrists, or even better, as philosophers. That's a hint that I think the ogre will understand. to me, I don't know. Perhaps people notice that at sometimes I'm pretty close to despairing with some of this stuff. Because I think, well, at some point, people will have to wake up and they will have to see it. They'll have to realize that this leads us down a very dark alley. And either positions start softening on both sides. And that basically means whoever you are, you have to move first. If your position is simply, oh, well, I can't do it. I can't do it. I must vote for this hardline left person. I must vote this way because otherwise the Trump man is going to get in. I can't have that. Well, forget about what the other people are voting for. You have to answer for yourself. And I think at some point we have to stop with this, oh, well, I'm only voting one way because I want to keep that other person out. In that case, by all means, forget about this whole ping pong between two parties. Vote for the Green Party. Vote Monster Raving Loony Party. Vote anything. But stop this calamity. Because in the end, it is the people who are responsible. I mean, let us assume for a moment that, you know, the people who are saying, oh, well, we've sent Trump to Washington to drain the swamp. So let us assume that he actually could do that, which he can't, but let's assume he could. And he would get rid of every single corrupt politician. He would have it in his powers to get rid of them all. What would happen? The people would simply vote in another batch of corrupt politicians. In the end, the answer is with the people who are voting in those politicians. And that's you and I. That's in a way where eventually the solution is to be found. Not with a Trump draining the swamp. If you fill it back up again, what's the point? So essentially, in the end, it comes down to you. You have to stop voting. You have to stop backing these radical ideas, these polarized agendas. I mean, most of all, you have to stop making excuses for these people. So even if you have got a candidate whom you support, and then it turns out that, well, yeah, perhaps he has been fiddling kids, or perhaps he has been caught with his hand in the till. Oh. Well, then stop making excuses for these people.
Fire them.
Fire them, precisely. At some point, it's up to you to actually start getting rid of these. And that will be the beginning of the rejuvenation of Western politics. When eventually the people begin waking up and realizing we need to get rid of these people because these people are dividing us and they are actually benefiting from the division. Anyway, I think I've rambled on long enough. I'll hand over to you, Mr. Roga.
It's beautiful. Maybe it's because I'm older. Maybe it's because winter's here. And while I'm cutting wood for the warmth here in the house for the outside boiler and whatnot, I realize that yet again it's harder this year than it was last. And I've grown even older and fatter than I had last year, because for most people, as Holly may know, the easy time is the summertime, right? You know, and they just, the winter time, they just kick back and do nothing. But for us Northerners, Holly, the easy time is the summertime. We work. We don't get fat in the winter. You get fat in the winter down south. If you live up north and you're any kind of Northerner, you don't get fat in the winter unless you just eat so much more for the calories you're putting out from shoveling your driveway and repairing stuff in the bitter cold. I mean, I don't want to go on and on, but I don't know what it is, Brett, if it's because I'm getting older. But at the end there, I was near tears, and I'm trying to hold myself together and look at my notes here. And I'm not going to let what you just said. I just want to ask you, mate, can I ask you one thing? Would you do me a favor and let me know when you're going to do what you did tonight from now on? Because I'll let you go at when you're going to have a wonderful speech that I can't follow. I'll let you go last. No, I was going to start with a funny story. It's about Stevie Ray Vaughan. he didn't get famous for a long time, not because he wasn't great. It's because he wasn't famous yet, and the other people had to go on after him. So there is a slew. If you look in the 70s, there's a slew of great performers that fired him because, man, by the time they get on stage and old Stevie came out with this Budweiser bottle on his slide, just blister. I mean, oh my God, Stevie Ray Vaughan. You know, they were yelling his name when, well, should I name any names? I don't want to be smirching, but somebody may be watching that would hurt their feelings. So I'll just get right on with that. So Britishers, sometimes you can be that Stevie Ray Vaughan. I'll do my best to make a good point and not think too much about trying to outdo anybody else. Wonderful words from everybody, too. I just want to mention that if the Britisher and I seem long-winded, remember, we said you could talk as long as you wanted. You know, first off, I'll say psychology versus sociology, Britt. You mentioned that, and it's very important that we see, I said at the beginning, there's 7 at most. Most people like myself see 5 schools of psychology. Sociology, what I sent you lot here in the panel, that's not even scratching the surface. There's like 35 or 40 schools of sociology. Sociology, as I said in the beginning, consists of 2 different kinds of people. One, statisticians. They count things. They look at people and count them. They don't influence them in any way. They just count them. And then they do their little formulas and they decide how many are white or black or how many like vanilla ice cream or like, you see what I mean? They're statisticians. That's all they are. And then you have the group of people that got our conversation going on tonight that are no different than Holly mentioned, intersectional. Oh, this intersectionality, that's a made-up word. That was not a word. I believe it was 1982. I was unfortunately in school by the time that word was made up, and I felt the effects of that. So without going too far into that, I'm going to go on into my and also Britisher stuff on Molyneux. So I'm going to go into my. So that said, I'm going to go. I said that was all my notes. I'm going to go into my final word proper now. I'm glad I could. Yes. So I'm just going to say that we don't always know that what we get is good from what we desire to do with our hypothesis. The thing that we think is going to happen does not always match up with what's going to happen in the case of, as I said earlier, Pavlov, Ivan Pavlov. He was not a psychologist. Look it up if you think I'm a fool. I'm not a fool. I've studied this stuff for years. He's not a psychologist. He wasn't a psychologist. As I said, he was studying digestive juices. He became a psychologist because they realized that ringing a bell, this is something that was classical conditioning. That comes from Ivan Pavlov. Ring a bell and I'll salivate. How you like that? You know what I mean? It's that Pavlovian, if you will, but classical conditioning. Then we get down to operant conditioning and go into B.F. Skinner and Albert Bandera and the like. But it's not always what we start out with, much in the case of Edward Bernays. He was, I think I slightly mentioned it earlier, he was the nephew of Sigmund Freud. He did know a lot about his uncle's doings and thoughts and ideas, but he was a genius. He got women to smoke cigarettes by getting 5 females to head this suffragette march and to light up Virginia Slims. I don't remember what the cigarette was. Light up cigarettes, and they put in the newspaper, these ladies light up torches of freedom. To back the suffragette movement. And let's face it, torches of freedom at the time, women just didn't smoke. It was a dirty, disgusting habit that gave the men lung cancer. After Edward Bernays, women got lung cancer. Was it because Edward Bernays was evil? I'm saying no. I'm going with the Britisher. I don't care how many times he repeats himself. I am basically repeating myself too. Why? Because after studying humanity, the way I've studied it, I'm going to give it to my brother whom I know the best here. After studying humanity the way he's studied it, does it matter that he's not studied it in the classroom? I'm going to humbly say no. And if you think so, well, maybe you want to elevate yourself above someone else's ideas. It's obviously, and I've studied them too. in and out of the classroom. What it comes down to, what you expect isn't always what you get. Let's not assume that the best intentions lead to the best results. And before I just go away here, Britt, I'm going to do something common sense. I'm going to do something I don't usually do. 058, Dr. Peterson stresses the need for us all to be mindful that the demon in all of us is in all of us. So thank you very much for that. I'm going to try to just read through these three little comments here. Joey Roy, yes, I was talking about the Lucifer effect. And Joey Roy, the same guy, was working on another study called the hero effect. And so, yes, please look into anybody. I know it's a little random, but check out the Lucifer effect. Check out the hero effect. Very astute of you, Joey Roy, because I didn't have that I didn't say anything about that out loud. So obviously we have someone else that has delved into the ology of the psyche. I'm going to implore all of you, consider what you do this week. This is Monday, very first church service. As Holly said, we do, and I thank you for thinking of us, because I don't think many people do consider that the British or the common sense guy myself usually do right around 7 to 9 hours a week of the same thing. And hey, it's fun for us sometimes. Sometimes it's hell. Sometimes in between, but we keep doing it. Why? I don't know. I think deep down inside of us, we want to let everybody know one important thing. Be good to your friends. Be good to your family members. Be good to your loved ones. Be quick to say you're sorry. Be even quicker to accept an apology, especially when that thing your friend, your family member, your loved one has done seems to be so huge, you'll never be able to forget about it. Because, constant viewer, beloved co-host, Holly, at a time you think not, your friends, your family members, your loved ones, your life and your cause will depart from you.